Hello everyone! Welcome to a supercut version of Ice Hearts. Finally, I got to making a supercut version of this that I promised a long time ago. But hey, finally got to it. Big experiment on my part because goddamn is it this long. But there is a bonus scene for you to enjoy, even though you've probably seen the series already. So keep an eye on that and let's get into it, shall we? As always, special thanks to my lovely patrons and all of you who subscribe and watch my videos. You're keeping this channel going and alive. Thank you so much, and I hope you will enjoy. What do you mean we can't train here? Kyotane clenched his hand around the strap of his gear bag, listening to the team captain Iwaizume and their coach talking, or rather arguing, with a security guard in front of the stadium. The team arrived for their morning practice, but they were stopped right by the door before they even set their feet inside. Hey, I'm just doing my job. The cooling is broken, so the ice is in terrible shape. We have someone coming to take a look at it, but it will take some time. Meanwhile, you have to go elsewhere. Kyotane grumbled under his breath, all the energy bubbling inside of him eager to be let out in the ring. A heavy weight landed on his shoulder. Don't scowl so much, you'll get wrinkles. Kyotane huffed and shook off Matsukawa's arm. The alternate captain smirked and ruffled Kyotane's short hair, even though he knew very well that Kyotane hated it. How this person got to be a second in command in the team was beyond his understanding. I just want to go in and play. He hated inactivity, and the bickering with the security guy was taking too long for his liking. He just wanted to feel the ice under his skates and the weight of his hockey stick in his hands. He perked up when frowning Iwaizume finally made his way back to the team. Bad news. The stadium is closed, so we have to find another one. Coach is calling some places, so we will see if someone has space for us. Matsukawa sighed. The funniest thing is we told them 2 weeks ago that the ice is bad and they should check the cooling. But no, they have to leave it until it's broken completely. Iwaizume shrugged, obviously not happy about the situation himself. Changing stadiums was always trouble. Now they had to go somewhere where they didn't have their personal space. You don't have to tell me. I bet they wanted to save money, so now they have to give out much more for the complete repair. Karma is real, I would say. Yeah, but now we are the ones who have to deal with it. Matsukawa patted his shoulder and nodded towards their coach. I think we get some news now. Kyotane raised his eyes to him with hope. Their coach was a man in his mid-50s, with a sharp mind and even sharper tongue, a hockey legend of his time. If anyone would be able to find them a new place to train, it was him. Well, the good news is there is a stadium that can accommodate us until the cooling here is repaired. He threw a less than pleasant look at the security guard before turning his attention back to the team. It's a stadium the curling team is using, but they have a normal rink for skating too, which is not used as much, so we can be there for now. It's smaller, and we will probably have to share the changing room with the curling team, but we can't be picky right now. Kyotane rolled his eyes. He had only seen one game of curling, and it was the most boring thing he had seen in his entire life. How could anyone be content with only sliding on the ice and sending stones forward was beyond him. But at least he would get to stand on the ice soon. The coach clapped his hands and started to herd the team like a bunch of kids on a school trip to the bus stop. Come on now, we have to hurry up if we want to finish at a reasonable time. Kyotane shivered with impatience as they walked through the door to the stadium. It really was much smaller than their hockey one, but it reminded him of his childhood and the time he went playing with his father. It was quite nostalgic. Back then, he would have never imagined he was going to play in the big stadiums once, getting cheered on by hundreds or even thousands of fans. He shook his head to shoo away the bittersweet memory of his father and followed Iwaizumi further into the building. He could already hear the shouting from the inside, which he supposed was the curling team having their practice. Why did they have to shout so much? Iwaizumi led them into the changing room, which they fortunately didn't share with the curling team, whereas the coach went to check on the ring. Gyatani let out a relieved sigh when he finally put on his gear, the familiar weight of all the guards making his heart pump faster with anticipation. He rushed out of the changing room and immediately stumbled backwards as he collided with another person. What the heck? Gyatani opened his mouth to cuss out whoever wasn't looking on their way, but the words got stuck in his throat. The man in front of him measured him with narrowed eyes and scrunched brow, but even like that, he was the most beautiful sight he had seen in the last few years. The silver hair framed his face perfectly, bringing up the caramel color of his eyes, and the fitting clothes, now moving around his body as he rubbed his chest, just underlined his lean figure. "Can't you look where you go?" Gyatani shook his head to wake up from the stupor and frowned. "Me? You crashed into me in the first place." "No, I didn't. You just barged out of the door like you own this place. What are you even doing here? This isn't a hockey stadium." Gyatani frowned even more at the tone the other used with the word hockey, but before he could say something back, he felt Iwaizumi's hand on his shoulder, squeezing to keep him quiet. "We are just visiting. Our stadium is closed right now and we have to train elsewhere. We will be using the rink in the back, so we won't interfere with your practices." The other clicked his tongue, but nodded. "Well, as long as you don't yell like madman, I guess it will be okay. But try to keep everything in place. We don't need you to close our stadium too." Gyatani was already opening his mouth to state they didn't break the cooling system on purpose either, but Iwaizumi's firm grip stopped him, so he settled for throwing eye daggers at the silver-haired man. He was pretty, but that was apparently the only quality he had. "We will do our best to get along." He gave Gyatani a meaningful look. "Everyone." Gyatani grumbled but didn't say anything. The rest of the team started to come out of the changing room led by Matsukawa, who wiggled his stupid eyebrows in Gyatani's direction as soon as he spotted the silver-haired man with them. Gyatani threw a murderous gaze at him. "Very well. I'll see you around, I guess." With that, he headed to the door next to them, only throwing one last glare in Gyatani's direction. Matsukawa elbowed Gyatani lightly into the ribs. "Pretty guy, eh?" Gyatani narrowed his eyes at him, trying to suppress the heat crawling up the back of his neck. "Don't you have a boyfriend?" Matsukawa shrugged. "I can appreciate beauty when I see it. Hiro would agree if he was here." "You are both disgusting." They stumbled as Iwaizumi pushed them both forward. "Stop chit-chatting! Warm-ups, now!" Gyatani rejoiced as soon as his feet touched the ice, erasing any thoughts other than hockey from his head, especially the ones about the silver-haired man. He definitely wasn't thinking about him. Not at all. If anything, that guy was apparently a prick. Pretty, but a prick. And probably stuck up too. Though, his eyes weren't cold or hard, quite on the contrary, even when he was frowning. Shaking his head, Gyatani chased the image away and headed to the circle formed around their coach to start their practice. He stretched his tired muscles, sighing contently. Nothing felt as good to him as the slight soreness in his legs after a good practice. Because the season was starting soon, they had to get into shape pretty quickly, especially since their goal was to win the cup this year. And watching the team, Kyotane actually started to believe they could finally make it. He walked around the other ice rink, where the curling team was also slowly finishing their practice, and paused. There was the silver-haired guy from before, getting ready to send his stone. Kyotane had to admit it was quite a fascinating sight, and not because of how the pants stretched around his legs when he squatted down. It was the absolute concentration in those big brown eyes that sent his heart beating faster, the fire in them just waiting to be awakened by a successful send. Some other guy standing at the end of the ice line called out something, and the silver-haired pushed himself forward, waiting a bit before letting the stone slide to the colorful circles by itself, accompanied by 2 other men with the weird brooms. The stone stopped precisely where the 4th guy pointed. "Nice one!" The silver-haired man clenched his fist in a content gesture and smiled at his teammates, praising them for good work. Kyotane looked away, the smile making his heart riot in his chest. Curse him and his whole pretty face. Kyotane would never admit it out loud, but his biggest problem with changing the environment might end up being that silver-haired guy. On one side, he could hardly stop watching him when he had a chance to see him during the practice. On the other hand, the man was causing him to lose his temper faster than Matsukawa, which was quite an amazing feat in itself. They spoke about every day so far, meaning 4 times, and yet they always managed to bicker about something, be it loud shouting, or mess in the hallway, or some other stupid thing. It was infuriating. And he still didn't even know his name. He huffed and sped up. He asked the coach if he could do some solo practice after the official one ended, meaning he was probably one of the last people in the building. He opened the door to the changing room without thinking, only to be torn from his thoughts by a high-pitched screech. "What the fuck are you doing here?" He looked up and froze, blood rushing into his face. He would lie if he said he wasn't imagining how the silver-haired guy looked without his sports clothes on at least on one occasion, but this wasn't how he imagined it to go. The other stared at him with an equally red face and wide eyes, wearing nothing and only a shirt in his hands. Get out! I'm sorry, it was an accident, I swear. He got hit in the face with a towel, soon followed by a shoe hitting his thigh. Out! Kyotane collected his wits and backed away as fast as possible, shutting the door behind him just in time to hear the second shoe hitting them from the other side. Fucking hell. He rushed to the correct door just a bit further down the hall, realizing too late he was still holding the towel. He contemplated going back, but then decided against it. I'll give it back tomorrow, if he wants to speak with me. Fortunately, only Iwaizumi and Matsukawa were in the changing room now, talking about some strategy for the first match of the season next week. They both looked at him, and Matsukawa snickered. See, I told you he's going to ask him. Iwaizumi raised his eyebrow. How do you even know? Oh, just look at his face. He's redder than a boiled lobster. I'm proud of you, Kyo. I didn't expect you to do the first step. Kyotane sputtered and hid the towel behind his back. What the fuck are you two talking about? You asked that pretty curling guy out, didn't you? He wiggled his eyebrows. You don't have to be shy about it. What? No, why would I do that? Well, first because you can't keep your eyes off him, second you always get all flustered when he's around, and third you always bicker when you talk to each other. You, my dear Kyotane, are in love and don't even try to deny it. Kyotane opened his mouth, but no words came out. Was he really? No way. That was stupid, right? Iwaizumi rolled his eyes and smacked Matsukawa's shoulder. See what you did? Now he's in shutdown mode. We just met a few days ago. How could I love... Besides, he's just pretty annoying, that's all. Yeah, but he's also pretty, isn't he? Well, yeah, but... Come on, Issei, leave him alone. It's none of your business anyway. Matsukawa pouted. I'm just trying to help. He turned back to Kyotane. So what happened? Kyotane sighed and sagged on the bench. I accidentally walked on him changing. There was a beat of silence before Matsukawa burst out laughing, and even Iwaizumi's mouth corners twitched upwards. Well, at least you know what you are getting into. Kyotane threw a murderous gaze at both of them and started to change quickly, throwing his things into the bag without any order. It's not funny. It's a good icebreaker though. You'll see you'll be telling it to your kids. Oh, I fell in love with your father when I accidentally saw him naked in the changing room where I wasn't supposed to be. Great story, don't you think? Oh yeah, absolutely perfect now that he thinks I'm some perv. You could invite him out as an apology. Yes, and if it goes well, you can plan the next meeting like a real date. Kyotane groaned inwardly, throwing away all hope he was getting out of this with his pride intact. What even makes you think he would be interested? And even if he was, which he certainly isn't, I don't know how to date. I haven't dated since I started high school. Yeah, we know. But you can at least try. Kyotane sighed and looked at the towel lying next to him. It wasn't like he didn't like the idea of going out on a date with the other guy. Quite on the contrary. But he might have just ruined any chance he had before, and even if not, there was no guarantee he wouldn't mess up on their very first date and completely drive the other away. However, he felt bad for what happened, and some apology would be nice. And who knew where would that take them? He took a deep breath and nodded with newfound determination. Fine, I'll ask him tomorrow. To apologize. Matsukawa grinned and patted his shoulder. That's my boy. He paced nervously back and forth along the hallway, waiting for the curling team to finish with their practice. He didn't manage to get hold of the other men when they came, and so now was the only chance to go on with his plan. If he could call it a plan. He was just going to apologize and hope that the man wasn't too upset with him to refuse a free coffee. The rest of the team already left, which he was kinda glad for. Matsukawa gave him a quick thumbs up before he headed outside, which surprisingly helped a bit. He stopped in his tracks when he heard 3 voices coming in his direction. They were the other men he saw on the ice line, but no silver hair in sight. A shorter man with a buzz cut, the one who was usually by the circles and shouting directions at the others, tilted his head when he spotted him. Are you waiting for someone? I was hoping to speak with your other teammate. Is he coming here? Oh yeah, KyouHaba should be here any moment. He's always the last one to go. KyouHaba is his name. Do you need anything particular with him? Kyotane shook his head. No, I just need to explain something. The other examined him a bit with his gaze and nodded, apparently satisfied. Alright then, he should be here soon. Oh, speaking of the devil. Kyotane looked up, and sure enough, the silver-haired man, KyouHaba, was coming down the hall. I'll leave you here to talk. KyouHaba crossed his arms over his chest, though his face didn't show as much annoyance as Kyotane expected. Instead, he looked curious. So, are you waiting here to walk on me changing again? Kyotane cleared his throat. No, I wanted to apologize. I was thinking and walked into the wrong door. It was an accident, I swear. I'm sorry I made you uncomfortable. It wasn't my intention. He was sincere, and yet he couldn't leave out an opportunity to jab a bit. No matter how annoying you might be. KyouHaba blinked, but then snorted a short laugh, sending Kyotane's heart rate up even when he covered his mouth to his immense disappointment. Goodness, that was the worst ended apology I've ever heard. But it was an apology nonetheless, and you are still new here, so I accept. Just watch which door you are using next time. I promise. They stood in the middle of the hall, just staring at each other for a moment, before KyouHaba cleared his throat, running his fingers through his hair. So, anything else you need? Yeah, I wanted to invite you for a coffee, or tea, or whatever you drink, as an apology. KyouHaba paused and clenched a fistful of his hair in his hand. Kyotane was already opening his mouth to backtrack, worried he might have gone too far too fast, when KyouHaba nodded. Alright. When? Kyotane inwardly rejoiced. Well, I was thinking today. If you are free, of course. I know a nice cafe nearby. KyouHaba smiled, and Kyotane could just die there and then. Okay, just wait for me outside. I'll be quick. Kyotane furiously scrolled on his phone, looking for some well-reviewed place. He cursed his too fast mouth. Why did he say he knows some place here? He was from the opposite side of the city and had no idea what options were here. He panicked when he heard the main door opening, but it was just the short-haired guy from before. He raised his eyebrows, seeing Kyotane leaning on the wall. Still waiting? Yeah, kinda. He bit the inside of his cheek. Tell me, do you know any good cafe around here? The other smirked. Oh, so you wanted a bit more than just to talk with KyouHaba after all. It's still part of that. Just extension. The other waved his hand and reached for Kyotane's phone, typing into the search bar. Here, this should be good. They have the best hot chocolate in the city. It's not far from here, so you can memorize the way if you want to make an impression. KyouHaba should be here soon. He then narrowed his eyes at Kyotane. I will warn you now though. I know not all hockey players are the same, but just to be sure. If you hurt him, you'll have to deal with all three of us. And I don't mean just physically. You break his heart, we break your nose. He's a kind guy and deserves to be treated as such. Understood? Kyotane nodded, though he wasn't sure where all this certainty of everyone else in their non-existent relationship came from. They were just going to get a coffee, no date. Crystal clear. The man smiled. Good. Well, good luck. Make sure KyouHaba has a great time, okay? With that, he headed down the street. Kyotane had to smile. It was nice seeing someone's friends caring like this. However, the other's mention of not all hockey players being the same brought up some questions in his mind. The door opened again, this time revealing KyouHaba tucked in a long brown coat and a colorful scarf. Kyotane's heart skipped a beat. It was so strange to see the other in something else than the minty and white sportswear, but it certainly was a nice change. He cringed a bit inwardly as he remembered his old leather jacket and torn jeans he was wearing, suddenly feeling like a duck next to a swan. He sent a quick prayer to deities that KyouHaba wouldn't be too embarrassed to go with him anywhere. Shall we? KyouHaba smiled brightly, his eyes actually sparkling and a faint pink tint coloring his cheeks. Lead the way. Kyotane led them through the streets, hoping he remembered the way correctly. They didn't speak much, but it wasn't any awkward silence Kyotane would expect on a first date.
Because there is no date.
He let out a relieved breath when he spotted the cafe sign above the door. He held the door open for KyouHaba, who gave him a small smile in return, making him blush. Gods, he was fucked. They decided on a table in a far corner by one of the large windows. Kyotane had to admit the guy had a great taste. The cafe was small and warm, the gentle decor on the walls and tables giving it a homely feel. It's a nice place, isn't it? Kyotane startled a bit, turning back to grinning KyouHaba. Did Shinji tell you about it? Kyotane would gladly disappear in his chair. So much for making a good impression. It's okay, it's the thought that counts. And I like it here. Kyotane sighed in relief and pushed the drink menu towards KyouHaba. Alright, order anything you like. My treat. He couldn't help but smile, seeing the spark of absolute joy in KyouHaba's eyes when the server set a big mug of hot chocolate in front of him. It made him look like a child getting a present, and Kyotane was all for it. He sipped his coffee, absolutely bewitched by the man in front of him. How could anyone be so cute without even trying was beyond him. As if he felt Kyotane's thoughts, KyouHaba raised his eyes from the mug and cleared his throat. I suppose I should apologize too. Kyotane tilted his head in confusion. For what? For that outburst I had yesterday. It's not like I don't change in front of others, but I panicked when I saw you there and acted on impulse. So, I'm sorry. Kyotane huffed a short laugh. It's fine. I wouldn't be overjoyed either if a stranger walked on me naked. You have a great aim though. That second shoe would hit me in the head if I didn't close the door. KyouHaba chuckled and hid his reddening face behind the mug. I wouldn't be able to do curling if I couldn't aim. He set the drink down and looked at Kyotane with curious eyes. So, wanna tell me something about you? We've been meeting for a week already, and the only thing I know about you is that you play hockey. Kyotane shrugged. There's not much interesting about me. Hockey is most of my life, so otherwise it's pretty boring. And judging by your reaction to us the first day, you aren't a big fan of hockey, so that takes the only interesting part out. It's not that. I just don't like how violent it is. You guys push each other into the barriers all the time, slash each other with the sticks, collide with each other and fight. What's the appeal of that? Kyotane clenched his jaw, careful to control his voice when he spoke. It's much more than that. Violence is part of the game, but it's not all. There's beauty in the game you would see if you watched past the occasional hit. KyouHaba avoided his gaze. I'm sorry if I hit the nerve. I didn't mean to sound haughty or anything. Heck, I bet you think curling is the most boring sport in the world. I have my reasons. That piqued Kyotane's interest, but he decided not to pry further. It was too soon for them to open up like that. But he added a mental note to the remark about hockey players from before. What about you? What do you do besides curling? The tension left KyouHaba's shoulders as he started to name all of his hobbies and interests, from painting to running. Kyotane was infatuated, feeling like a love-struck high schooler again as he watched KyouHaba's eyes shine with passion for everything he did. He felt a bit bad for calling KyouHaba a prick in his head for the last week. The guy certainly wasn't just a pretty face, and Kyotane wasn't sure how exactly he should deal with that without losing his mind and footing in the process. But considering he already felt himself falling deep, it might have been too late for that. The next 2 hours flew by like 5 minutes. Kyotane found out it was really easy to talk to KyouHaba, with the exception of hockey, and he couldn't help but be a bit disappointed when the other stated he had to go home. They split the bill in the end, as KyouHaba was insistent that Kyotane already apologized, and this was just an added thing. Kyotane didn't want to argue and agreed, but inwardly promised himself he wouldn't let KyouHaba pay for the real date. If there will be any. He frowned slightly at his reflection in the window, wondering if there was any reason KyouHaba would agree to more dates. He surely had a lot of other suitors. He had to have. There were far better options. Still, Matsukawa's words resonated in his head, and what is life without a bit of risk, as his father often said. I really enjoyed today. Taking a deep breath, Kyotane put on his best flirty expression he could muster and took a leap. So, can I ask you on a real date now? KyouHaba's eyes widened and Kyotane cringed inwardly. You don't have to say yes. It's fine if you want this to stay a one-time thing. I understand. No, it's not that. He chuckled nervously, running his fingers through his hair. I just haven't dated for a while, so it surprised me. But I would love to go out again. His lips curled with a shy smile, and Kyotane was about to melt into a puddle of goo. He accompanied KyouHaba to the train station, already planning out their first real date in his head. I still won in the end. Iwaizumi rolled his eyes and pushed a few banknotes to Matsukawa. Kyotane huffed in disbelief. Did you really bet on my dating? Matsukawa grinned at him with an expression of a proud father while he hid his newly acquired money in his wallet. Yes, and as you can see, I believed in you. Unlike someone, I had full trust in your charms. You also basically pushed him into it, so it's not really fair. He looked at Kyotane, his face softening a bit. I'm glad you did it though. Congrats. He seems like a nice guy. He is. He's interesting, for sure. Aw, I can already hear the wedding bells. When is the next date? Kyotane shrugged his arm off of his shoulders, growing quietly, which did not affect Matsukawa's grin in the slightest. It never did. Fuck off with your wedding bells. And I don't know when. We just agreed to go out, no details. Do you at least have a place in mind? Yes, but I won't tell you because you would be able to follow me there to spy and potentially ruin everything. Not happening. Iwaizumi snorted. Matsukawa held his hand to his heart, acting offended. How can you say that about me? Is this the thank you I deserve for helping you make the first step towards your future relationship? Stop with these predictions, for fuck's sake, you'll jinx it! Iwaizumi chuckled and pushed Kyotane out of the room towards the ice rink, nodding slightly towards the curling lines where KyouHaba was getting ready with his team. Don't worry about it too much. He already said yes, that's the most important part. Just be yourself and it will go well. Are you sure that's a good advice in my case? As if he felt their gazes on him, KyouHaba paused the stretching exercise and looked over to the second rink, waving shyly in their direction with a small smile on his lips. Kyotane returned the gesture after a second of hesitation, finding himself smiling back. He already said yes. That's a good start. Their practice took longer than usual, mostly because they were trying different line formation to determine who was going to play where in the first match of the season. As an ambidextrous person, Kyotane was suited for playing both on the right and left wing, even though he preferred the right. In the end, he was settled into the second line side by side with Matsukawa, who, despite his annoying personality, was one of the best and the most perceptive centers he had ever met. It was an honor to play in the same line with him, even though he would never say it out loud. He stayed behind a bit, convincing Iwaizumi and one of his other teammates to help him with the face-offs, one of the few plays he wasn't very good at. But if they were supposed to play their best, the whole team had to put in everything. Glancing up one time, he spotted KyouHaba leaning on the boards by the bench, watching them carefully. Kyotani focused on the puck, suddenly determined to show KyouHaba hockey wasn't just roughing and fights. In the end, he got his success rate up to 74%, making him smile like an idiot when he walked around KyouHaba after they finished. I didn't expect you to watch us. KyouHaba blushed, fidgeting with his fingers. It wasn't a full game, so I knew you wouldn't push each other around much. And I wanted to talk to you. Kyotani's heart dropped. Oh, did you change your mind about the date? It's fine if you did, I understand. No, that's not... I want to go out with you. I just realized we didn't talk about any details and such. His cheeks reddened a bit more. And, you still have my towel. Kyotani chuckled and let out a relieved breath. True. Come on, I should have it in my bag. Their fingers brushed when he handed the towel over, sending his heart racing, though judging by the red color of KyouHaba's face, he wasn't doing much better. He cleared his throat. So, are you free this Saturday? At about 10? I know a nice place I would like to take you to. For real this time. KyouHaba giggled. If that place isn't somewhere in the deep forest or your basement, then yes, I'm free on Saturday. Where should I arrive? I can pick you up if you want. By the train station or bus or whatever is comfortable for you. KyouHaba gave him a soft, grateful smile, enough to weaken his knees. Then, at 10 by the station, the one you took me to yesterday. I'm looking forward to it. He actually couldn't sleep properly at night. He wasn't sure if it was because he was nervous or excited, probably a bit of both. He couldn't recall when was the last time he spent so long deciding what to wear, but he had to look at least a bit presentable, therefore his usual plain jeans and hoodie were out of the question. Taking a shuddered breath, he clenched his hands a few times to stop them from shaking. Come on, it's okay. He enjoyed the last hangout and it wasn't even date yet. Which could potentially mean KyouHaba would be expecting something better now that it was a date. His phone pinged with a new message from Matsukawa, closely followed by one from Iwaizumi, both wishing him luck on the date. Kyotani chuckled, some of the tension leaving his body. It's going to be fine. He arrived about 10 minutes early and parked his car near the exit from the station. Because he didn't know where KyouHaba lived, he had no idea when his train was supposed to arrive. He just hoped he wasn't late. He startled when someone knocked on the window and sputtered when KyouHaba snickered at him. You almost gave me a heart attack! He took a deep breath to calm down his racing heart. Are you waiting for long? Oh no, I just arrived. I wanted to be a bit early, but you beat me to it. Where are we going? Surprise. KyouHaba raised his eyebrow and Kyotani had to suppress the urge to cringe, suddenly aware he maybe hadn't chosen the best place for a first date since he only had a little idea about what KyouHaba enjoyed. It's not your basement, is it? What? No! What do you think I am? Hey, I'm just careful. I won't wake up in some dark room handcuffed to a metal pipe, right? I mean, if that's what you are into. He froze, realizing too late what he just said, his face turning a pretty shade of a tomato. But KyouHaba just snorted and settled next to him in the car. No, not really. I'm too vanilla for that. Sorry if I just disappointed you.
It might be you who will be disappointed. What do you even see in me?
Are you okay? He snapped out of his thoughts, smiling lightly upon meeting KyouHaba's concerned gaze.
Yeah, sorry. I just remembered something.
Let's go, shall we? There was no way back now. Kyotani squeezed his hands on the wheel and drove towards their destination. He was going to do everything in his power to deserve another date from this. He stopped the car in an empty parking lot about one street from his target. He wasn't trying to be dramatic, he just didn't want to spend the horrendous money on parking. And the walk was short. They got out of the car and KyouHaba looked around curiously.
We are not there yet.
Should I close my eyes or something?
No need to. It's just behind the corner. Come on.
They walked around the house, and soon all kinds of colorful stalls appeared in front of them. Kyotani glanced at KyouHaba hesitantly.
I figured you might like a walk since you said you like running in the parks. And there's a little festival too now, so... Do you like it?
KyouHaba's eyes no less than sparkled, breaking the stone that settled over Kyotani's heart. Are you kidding? I love these! I can't believe I didn't know about this place. Can we take a look at what they sell? I want some sweets. Do they sell sweets?
Kyotani chuckled, completely enamored by KyouHaba's childlike excitement. I'm sure we will find something for you.
They ended up buying overpriced waffles and strawberries and chocolate, which KyouHaba devoured before Kyotani even managed to pay for them. Kyotani could never imagine he would see someone like KyouHaba, who usually acted as the glass itself, stuffing his face with chocolate like a small child. It was endearing, and Kyotani realized he was probably so deep he would need a ladder to get out. As if feeling his gaze on him, KyouHaba looked up from his food and blushed, covering his mouth. Sorry, I shouldn't act like I haven't eaten in a week. It's not a nice sight, is it?
Kyotani snickered. On the contrary. Don't worry about it. We are in a park, not at some VIP banquet. And I'm kinda glad I don't have to pretend I know table manners in front of you.
KyouHaba laughed, which was a sound Kyotani definitely wanted to hear more often. Even better, have it on repeat. You don't. I know I seem uptight, but I guess that's a remnant from my childhood. My parents were very strict about manners. I'm glad I'm out of there.
Kyotani raised his eyebrow. So you are a rich kid? I don't mean it in a bad way. You don't act spoiled or anything. You are really nice, in fact.
KyouHaba shrugged, a light pink tint covering his cheeks. I wouldn't call my parents rich. I would say middle class who wanted to look like an upper class. But I don't really care anymore. They don't want to have anything with me since I came out and said I won't take over the family business because I have my own dreams, and I'm quite content with it. I haven't seen them for 7 years and I don't miss them. Kyotani hummed, deep in thought. He couldn't imagine living in a family that he would be glad to leave behind. But apparently, some parents were really as shitty as he heard.
So you gave up on your family money to fulfill your curling dream?
KyouHaba's face fell a bit. Not really a curling dream back then, but... Haba-chan? Is that you? They both turned around, spotting a tall man with light brown hair waving at them. Or rather at KyouHaba. Kyotani scowled, feeling a tiny jab of jealousy in his chest when KyouHaba's face lit up. Oh, Oikawa-san, hello. I didn't expect to see you here.
Wait, Oikawa? I know that name.
Toru! Stop disappearing the second I turn around! Kyotani shivered a bit hearing the familiar voice of his captain, and sure enough, only a second later, he saw Iwaizumi making his way towards the man with hands full of food and plush toys. A light bulb switched on in Kyotani's head,
He did, in fact, meet Oikawa once, about 4 years ago, at some team gathering where the players could bring their partners. And Iwaizumi talked about his boyfriend occasionally, praising his achievements in figure skating. But he only referred to him as Toru at those moments. Iwaizumi raised his eyebrow when he noticed them and nodded in greeting. I see I could have wished you good luck personally. Hello, Kyotani. He then turned to Oikawa and pushed some of the things to his chest. And you hold these. They are yours anyway. I'm not your personal carrier.
But Hajime...
No, carry it yourself.
Meanie.
Kyotani rolled his eyes. Some things never changed, apparently. He leaned closer to KyouHaba, who looked like he was royally amused. You know him? Oikawa gave him a bright smile. Of course. Haba-chan and I were rivals for several years. All in the spirit of competition, no bad blood. Or at least I hope so. Wait. KyouHaba smiled. Oh, you were far better than me, even back then. We didn't stand a chance for the first place when you competed. Wait. Surprised, shocked, and impressed all at once, he turned back to KyouHaba. Does that mean you used to be a figure skater? Yes, and he was great too. He's just exaggerating about the competition. KyouHaba blushed, and Iwaizumi smacked Oikawa's head, lightly pushing him towards the center of the park. Stop speaking for others. I'm sorry, you two. I'll lead him away. Enjoy your date. Wait, date? Why didn't you tell me? Iwaizumi pushed him forward again. Because you are obnoxious when it comes to other people's relationships. Now, move. I want to see if they have that Godzilla plushie from the ad. Such a brute, Hajime. Kyotani watched them leave with raised eyebrows. Oikawa was certainly something. He no longer doubted why Iwaizumi was chosen as the team captain. Not that he ever doubted him before. Well, that was unexpected. Kyotani blinked, returning to reality. KyouHaba was playing with the stick from the strawberries, a small smile on his lips, but Kyotani noticed a tension in his shoulders that wasn't there before. So when you said you had dreams, you meant figure skating? KyouHaba nodded, snapping the stick in half. I wanted to skate since I was 5. My parents thought it was just some phase, but because it looked good, they allowed me to practice. How did you end up on a curling team then? He regretted asking the very second the words left his mouth. KyouHaba sighed. I just didn't feel it anymore, you know? You shouldn't do something you don't enjoy. He shook his head and smiled, a bit more happily now. Can we try some games now? I feel lucky today. Kyotani wanted to ask further. Why didn't he enjoy skating anymore, or why curling of all things, but stopped himself in time. The subject was obviously hard for KyouHaba, and he didn't want to make him even more uncomfortable than now. He wanted KyouHaba to have a great time, not relive old pains. And so he threw away the coasters and nodded towards the various stalls with certainly rigged festival games. Wanna try who gets more points in throwing the hoops? He rejoiced, seeing the competitive fire igniting in KyouHaba's eyes again. Bring it on, you'll regret challenging me. They settled on the bench in the park, far enough from the festival to muffle all the ruckus going on around the stalls. Squeezing a plush seal to his chest, a prize Kyotani won for him in the hoops, KyouHaba glanced at the blonde next to him, who was frowning at a pair of small kids running around screaming. His heart fluttered, remembering the look of absolute pride Kyotani had when he handed him the plushie. He was surprisingly good at aiming for a hockey player. But then again, he had to aim when shooting on the net, right? He shook his head. Better not to think about Kyotani as a hockey player. The man was nice, and despite his gruff outside,
had a gentle side in him KyouHaba hadn't seen before he invited him for a coffee 3 days ago. He didn't regret a single minute he spent with the other man, but as soon as he recalled he was a hockey player, doubts started to gnaw in his mind, the small part of his consciousness warning him to be careful. He knew he was being unfair to him. After all, he didn't do anything that would imply he was a bad person, but the memories were still fresh in his mind to be completely ignored. And meeting Oikawa brought some of it to the surface. Aren't you going to ask? Kyotani leaned back on the bench and shook his head. No, I think you would tell me if you wanted to talk about it. I'm not going to push you into telling me something you don't want. KyouHaba found himself smiling, a warm feeling spreading around his chest. He patted the plushie in his lap, wondering if he was actually dreaming. But a single pinch of his skin told him he was indeed where he was, with a man he would gladly start a relationship with. The thought surprised him. He was avoiding dating as much as he could, worried he might burn himself again. But with Kyotani, everything felt so natural and easy he almost couldn't believe it. They couldn't be more different, and yet... His gaze fell on Kyotani's hand, his own hand itching to know how would Kyotani's skin feel against his, and how well would their hands fit into each other. Would Kyotani hold his hand if he reached out for it? Or if he straight up asked? He looked at the plush seal and got an idea. He slowly inched it towards Kyotani, nudging his side with its nose. Kyotani raised an eyebrow at him, but a small smile playing on his lips filled KyouHaba with more determination. He moved the seal up and down Kyotani's side, nudging his arm and thigh. Kyotani snorted. You look like a child that wants attention. KyouHaba nudged him with the seal's nose again, his cheeks warming up. And what if I do? What if I really want to hold your hand right now? He bit his lip, digging his fingers into the soft fur of the plushie when Kyotani's gaze fell on their hands. Do you really want to? KyouHaba nodded. Yes. It's okay if you don't want to. It's our first date after all, and I don't want to push you into things, so if you think... Words died off in his throat as Kyotani slid his fingers along the back of his hand, the gentle touch of his rough skin sending waves of pleasant tingling into his whole arm. He only realized he stopped breathing at some point when Kyotani spoke up again. Is that okay? He let out the held breath and took a leap, entwining their fingers together. In a sudden surge of bravery, he caressed Kyotani's skin with his thumb, enjoying the warmth radiating from it. Yeah, it's more than okay. Kyotani visibly relaxed and squeezed his hand a bit tighter. KyouHaba's heart was beating like crazy in his chest, but he couldn't be happier. It was almost 3 years since he felt like that. Maybe this would really end well after all. KyouHaba. He snapped out of his thoughts and locked his eyes with Kyotani's. Huh? I really want to do something too. KyouHaba tilted his head in confusion, worry spiking in his chest again. Okay. He shivered as a calloused hand cupped his cheek, Kyotani's breath ghosting over his skin now that he leaned closer. Just pull away if you get uncomfortable. In answer, KyouHaba closed those few centimeters between them. It wasn't the most perfect kiss he ever got, but just the soft touch of Kyotani's lips on his own was more than enough to set off fireworks in his chest. Maybe he could be happier after all. About 2 awesome hours later, he was waiting for his train to arrive, still feeling Kyotani's lips on his own.
He couldn't recall the last time he felt so much like a love-struck teenager, nor would he ever expected a first date to end this well. And yet, here he was, blushing at the memory of the gentle touches they shared on the way to the station. He had already sent a short report to Watare, who may or may not have sent him to hell for making him feel single despite having a girlfriend, before promising he would call soon for more details. KyouHaba had to smile. He was utmost grateful for his team, especially Watare. It was mostly them who kept him above the surface 3 years ago and helped him when everything looked dark, and their still ongoing care was heartwarming. He didn't forget about his friends from his figure skating time, but his life now lay with curling and his team. And now, apparently, with a certain full-blown hockey player. His phone rang. "So, how did it go? Spill it. I want to know every detail." KyouHaba blushed. "It went well. At least I think so. We were at a small fair in a park I had no idea about. We had a good time, had something to eat, played games, and then he drove me back to the station." "Oh? Already driving you around, huh? He's not losing time." "Hey, he's just being nice because it was far." Okay, got it. But still, at least you know he has some money lying around." "Shinji!" Watari laughed. "Alright, I'll stop. But how was he? I spoke with him just the day he invited you to the cafe, and he seemed quite nice. But appearances can be deceiving, so how is he really? Did you threaten him again?" "I just warned him not to hurt you." "Oh, come on, we talked about this. I can assess people on my own." "Yes, but I still wanted to be sure. I'm just looking out for you, okay? I don't want to see you getting your heart broken again. And it can tell you a lot about the person. He didn't even bat an eye when I warned him. He agreed straight away. That's a good sign. He doesn't get nervous about it because he wouldn't do such a thing." KyouHaba's heart fluttered. Not only because of the care from Watare, but also because of his words. He didn't doubt Kyotane's intentions since their first date, despite the awful first impression he gave away. He felt safe around the blonde, both from the outside world and from the man himself. But it was still nice to hear confirmation of that feeling from someone else. He's kind, for sure, and understanding. We met Oikawa-san at the fair. You know, that figure skater I competed with years ago, and he kinda found out that I used to do figure skating, but he didn't ask about it when he saw I don't want to talk about it." "Good on him. What was next?" "We played some games and talked and he kissed me." There was a beat of silence on the other end. "Huh. Just like that? Maybe I was a bit fast in character judgment." "Wait, no, that's not... I initiated contact first when I asked him if I could hold his hand. And he asked if I'm okay with the kiss and gave me the option to back away. He was really nice about it and didn't ask for anything more than that." He heard Watari letting out a relieved breath. "Okay, good. I was worried I misjudged him this much. But seriously though, if he ever pulls that 'I'm paying for the date so you owe me sex' crap on you, I'm kicking his ass." KyouHaba chuckled. "Don't worry, he doesn't seem like that type. He's really considerate, I would say. And nice and really gentle. He got me a plushie." "Oh really?" He could hear Watari smirking on the phone and felt heat rising to his face that had nothing to do with the surrounding cold. "Well, I mean, yeah?" "My dear Shigeru, I think you are in love." KyouHaba gasped, unable to form a coherent sentence for a moment. Was he really? No, that wasn't possible. They've known each other for a little over a week. He couldn't possibly be in love already. No one could fall in love this fast, right? Was he taking things too fast? Maybe he should slow down. What if Kyotane? I can hear the cogs turning in your head. He snapped out of his thoughts, remembering he was still on call. Huh? Don't worry about it. I've seen how he looks at you, and I'm pretty sure he's pretty into you too. Just be you, okay? Did you agree on a second date? Yeah, on Friday. He's away the whole week because their season starts on Monday. Your treat or his? I guess both. He said he has a place in mind he wants us to go, but I don't want him to pay for me on both dates, so I'm paying this time. Okay, great. I expect a detailed report after that too. Of course you do. I'm just happy for you. This one might be a keeper, you know? That image made his heart beat faster in excitement. Well, I'll be going now. See you on Monday. Yeah, don't forget to bring that USB I lent you. He ended the call, a pleasant, warm feeling spreading through his chest. He wondered if Kyotane felt the same way about him and the possibility of them starting a relationship. He hoped so. He noticed his phone blinking with a new message. Yahoo, Haba-chan. It was nice seeing you again. Good luck on your future dates with Kyotane. Hajime swears he's a good guy even though he's so frowny. Come stop by sometime at the stadium. We would love to see you and talk a bit. Even Kunimi, though he would never admit it. You know how he is. Take care. He smiled at the messages, but his heart ached. He would love to see his old friends, but the stadium brought back too many memories. He couldn't even walk around it without being reminded of that one moment that turned his life upside down. He couldn't go there. Not yet. He tapped in a short reply and got on the train, already looking forward to his warm bed. Kyotane let out a long sigh as he slumped on the bench in the changing room. They just returned from their last match, and their coach decided they had enough time to stop at the stadium for some after-match skating. Which wasn't a bad thing under normal circumstances, but Kyotane was too tired to be happy about it. The last match with Nekoma was exhausting, and even though they won in the end, their defense made it damn difficult for them. Still, he quickly changed into his practice gear to be out as soon as possible. There was a shining light waiting for him by the curling lines. Hopefully. He hadn't seen KyouHaba the whole week since they had their practices in the hosting stadiums and weren't coming back here. They just messaged a few times about each other's days, which was too little for Kyotane's liking. And so he rushed to the ring, his eyes roaming around and looking for the familiar silver hair. His heart dropped a bit when he realized they were probably late as he couldn't spot anyone from the curling team. And while he knew they still had the tomorrow date ahead of them, he would lie if he said he wasn't disappointed. A light tap on his shoulder snapped him out of his thoughts. He jumped, but immediately calmed down upon hearing a familiar giggle. Yeah, really easy to scare. Are you sure you don't have a bad conscience? Kyotane rolled his eyes, surprising himself with the thought of how nice it would be to just pull KyouHaba to him and kiss that bright smile off of his face. No, you just always catch me when I'm thinking. KyouHaba tilted his head, apparently royally amused. Isn't thinking a bit dangerous for you then? Only when it's about you. He smirked contently, seeing his words had the intended effect when KyouHaba turned bright red, his lips parting a bit. Which, unfortunately for him, made him want to kiss KyouHaba even more. Well done playing yourself. He cleared his throat, shooing away all those improper thoughts. There was enough time for that, and he certainly didn't want to drive KyouHaba away by being too forward. The man deserved proper courting before they got further. So, are we still going on that date tomorrow?
Of course. I was looking forward to it the whole week, to be honest. I can't wait to see what you have in mind.
Yeah, about that. Kyotani, stop flirting and get your ass here.
Kyotani's ears burned to the very tips. He felt like a teenager caught by his parents with his crush. And judging by the bright red color of KyouHaba's face, he wasn't the only one. He grunted, inwardly cursing Iwaizumi for having the worst possible timing, and gave KyouHaba an apologetic look.
Sorry, I have to go. But I'll pick you up by the station tomorrow, if you want me to.
KyouHaba smiled and nudged him forward. I'll be there. He hesitated a bit before giving Kyotani a quick peck on the cheek. See you tomorrow. Kyotani stared after him, the touch of his lips still ghosting on his skin. He found himself smiling like an idiot before Iwaizumi's stern voice woke him up from his trance. Ah, young love, how beautiful. Kyotani threw a murderous gaze at Matsukawa and skated towards their coaching circle. Once again, he found himself in front of the train station, and once again reminded himself to ask KyouHaba from where he was coming, so he could find out when his train would arrive. Though that was a pretty personal question, and he wasn't sure if it wouldn't be too much. He still had yet to uncover why exactly everyone from KyouHaba's surroundings was wary around hockey players, but he knew enough to realize it had to have something to do with KyouHaba's past love life. And if a hockey player was responsible for making KyouHaba insecure about dating, he was going to make sure to show him that not every hockey player is the same. If it meant taking things really slow, so be it. He could be patient when it counted, and KyouHaba was worth the wait. He took care of not being deep in thoughts this time and smiled when he spotted the approaching man. KyouHaba waved at him, clearly in good spirits, which was great. He just hoped it would last the whole date. You sure like to surprise me, don't you? I never know where you are taking me. I like to keep my dates entertained the whole time. Oh, so you do this with all your dates? Kyotani cleared his throat.
I would, if I had any.
Wait, don't tell me you haven't been on a date before. Don't people usually find hockey players really attractive?
Maybe, but not me apparently.
He sighed, squeezing his hands around the wheel.
I wasn't really in the mood for dating when my dad died. And then I invested all my time into hockey, so there wasn't really an opportunity for dating.
KyouHaba's smile fell. Oh, I'm sorry. About your dad, not about your dating. It doesn't matter how much you dated before. It doesn't make you any less worthy of dating or anything. And it's wrong that society often thinks like that. I'm sorry, I'm blubbering too much, aren't I? Despite the bittersweet memories of his father, Kyotani had to smile. If anything, his formerly non-existent dating brought him here into this moment, side by side with a stunningly beautiful man who apparently was interested in him and not in his hockey money.
Don't worry about it. It's cute when you do.
A soft smile made its way back to KyouHaba's face, but Kyotani wondered if his constant apologizing for his not-so-classy behavior was a remnant of his upbringing or his previous relationship. He really hoped it wasn't the latter.
Let's go, shall we? We should be having fun, not dig around our pasts.
KyouHaba relaxed. Right. I can't wait for the surprise. He stopped at the parking lot this time, avoiding a group of kids with skates over their shoulders. He watched KyouHaba from the corner of his eye and bit his lip nervously, waiting for his reaction. KyouHaba blinked a few times, his eyes taking in the ice rink in front of them. Ice skating?
Yeah. You said you used to be a figure skater, so I thought you could enjoy it. We can go somewhere else, of course, if you don't want to be here. It's okay. No, it's alright. I'm just surprised. I guess that was the point, right? I just thought you would have enough after all the practices and matches. I can never have enough of skating. KyouHaba smiled and got out of the car, watching the people sliding around the ring. He had a sort of dreamy look in his eyes, the one Kyotane often saw on his father's face when they watched matches on TV after he couldn't play anymore. But there was something more in his gaze too, something that made Kyotane waver in his resolution. Are you sure you want to be here? I don't want you to be uncomfortable. KyouHaba gave him one of his grateful smiles, the type that always made Kyotane's knees weak, and shook his head. It's alright. You just have to promise you'll catch me if I fall. Of course. He waited until KyouHaba bound his borrowed skates and breathed in the crispy fresh air typical for early winter. The whole park was covered in a soft blanket of snow that appeared overnight, giving the whole city a kind of fairy tale atmosphere. Shall we? KyouHaba nodded and let Kyotane go first before hesitantly stepping on the ice. He took a sharp inhale and had to grab the barrier when one of the skates slid from under him. But he managed to stay upright, though a bit wobbly on his feet. What was actually behind the idea to go ice skating together? Kyotane made a small circle back to him and tilted his head. I wanted to see you actually skate. From what Oikawa said, I understood you were great. I wanted to see it. KyouHaba made a few wobbly steps towards him, his brows furrowed in concentration. Kyotane snickered. Though, now that I watch you, I'm having a problem believing you actually used to skate professionally. KyouHaba narrowed his eyes at him. Don't laugh at me. I haven't skated since I ended my career. That piqued Kyotane's interest. He couldn't imagine ever leaving the ice for good, even after his hockey career ended. He loved it too much. That was something he inherited from his father, and the reason he had to watch the happy light in his father's eyes dimming more and more every day before he passed. It was a blessing and a curse in one. Why did you stop? KyouHaba sighed, and Kyotane immediately regretted asking. I just couldn't find the happiness I felt before when I was on the ice. I've always loved skating. I still do. But I just can't feel the drive to skate anymore. And that's something you can't lose if you want to skate professionally. If you don't enjoy your ride, then it's all useless. You wouldn't have to skate professionally. Maybe you could go skating from time to time, just like that. Maybe that happiness would come back. Perhaps, but I guess I'm scared I'll get hurt again. Oh. Yet then I felt a jab of guilt in his chest, seeing the sadness in KyouHaba's eyes. He should have known there was something more behind the change from figure skating to curling. He should have asked before he took him here. KyouHaba chuckled a bit awkwardly and glued himself to the barrier. We keep hitting old scars today, don't we? Let's not talk about it and enjoy today, okay? I'm glad you took me here, really. I'm just afraid I might not be the best entertainment today. Kyotane shook his head and reached his hands towards KyouHaba. I'll make sure you won't fall, I promise. KyouHaba stared at his outstretched arms for a moment before he hesitantly pushed himself off the barrier and grabbed onto the offered hand, his cheeks coloring light pink. Kyotane gently squeezed the smaller hands and pulled him a bit closer. Don't worry about anything. I'll catch you if you start falling. KyouHaba cracked a small smile and nodded.
They slowly circled the ring, avoiding all the other people who had the same idea. Yotani kept them close to the barrier in case KyouHaba wanted something to steady himself further, but after the second round, it didn't seem like a necessary precaution. He rejoiced when he spotted the lively light back in KyouHaba's eyes as they skated around side by side, their fingers entwining at some point.
How does it feel?
KyouHaba gave him a bright smile, his big brown eyes sparkling. It's great when I know I have you watching out for me. Kyotani's heart swelled. He was sure it wasn't easy for KyouHaba to trust someone this much, and the happier he felt he put that trust into him. He squeezed his hand in reassurance. I'm glad you are having fun. Before KyouHaba could answer, a fast shadow flashed in the corner of his eye. KyouHaba yelped as the stranger collided with him, making him lose balance. Yotani wrapped his arms around KyouHaba's waist in a flash and pulled him to his chest.
Hey! Watch where you skate, you ass!
A gloveless hand covered his mouth before he managed to finish. Don't swear, there are kids here. Yotani huffed, but his attention was now fully on KyouHaba again. He was smiling, but Yotani could feel his chest heaving, and his eyes were wide. It was quite distracting, especially with their position and the light pink tint on KyouHaba's cheeks. KyouHaba moved his hand from his mouth, gently caressing his cheek. You kept your promise. You caught me. He pushed himself up and pressed a soft kiss on Kyotani's lips. Thank you. Yotani smiled and pulled him even closer, his cheeks prickling with heat. Do you want to get hot chocolate? They make good here. Can we get the big cup? Please? Chuckling, Kyotani returned the kiss.
Anything you want. It's starting to sound like some stupid Christmas movie. I'm going to get diabetes if you don't stop with all this sweetness.
KyouHaba snickered and bumped his friend's shoulder. Jealous much? Tch, as if. I think you are. Wataru threw one of his shoes at him. KyouHaba laughed and dodged, seizing the shoe and holding it above his head out of Wataru's reach. The skip huffed and jumped around while trying to get his equipment back, making KyouHaba laugh even harder. He knew he shouldn't provoke their captain like this, but he was confident enough in their relationship to pull off things like this from time to time. It kept the spirits high. And it was Wataru who started it after all. He stopped teasing him after some time and gave him his shoe back, ostentatiously ignoring Wataru's quiet muttering. He changed quickly and perked up when he heard many pairs of feet stomping around the door, accompanied by the deep voices of the hockey team. Wataru elbowed him lightly into the ribs. Seems like your not so generic white male lead is here. KyouHaba threw him a warning glare, but couldn't help the stupid grin making its way to his face. He hadn't seen Kyotani since their skating date 3 days ago, as the hockey team had matches in different cities again. He peeked from the door, catching a glimpse of the bleached hair, and smiled, hearing the gruff voice telling someone off. He really missed the other man. Despite being really frowny, as Oikawa put it, he somehow managed to light up KyouHaba's day just by being around. And that warm, fuzzy feeling inside his chest he got when Kyotani touched him was also a pleasant bonus. Despite his training to split personal life from practices and keeping his head purely in game, he couldn't help but let his thoughts wander to Kyotani and their last date. He couldn't remember the last time he had such a great time with someone outside of his team. Even though Kyotani insisted there wasn't much interesting about him except for hockey, KyouHaba managed to find out quite a lot of small things about the man that only infatuated him further. That he always wanted a dog, but couldn't have one because of the constant traveling.
that he had those tiny rituals before every match to ensure a win. Also that his team was his second family, even though he was reluctant to admit it, which KyouHaba found really sweet. All in all, he came to the conclusion Kyotani might be built like a guard dog, but he was really a puppy deep down. A sharp snap of fingers in front of his face returned him back into reality. He smiled apologetically at his coach and prepared for his 2 throws, blocking everything but the game out of his mind. He could daydream about Kyotani later. To his own surprise, he found himself walking to the second rink after their practice ended once again. The hockey team was still on the ice, practicing shooting and possibly some game strategies KyouHaba had no idea about. He slid on the bench, watching intently as Kyotani skated forward with an amazing speed, sending a pummeling shot towards the net. Shivers ran down his spine, imagining he would have to face that as a goalie. He couldn't understand the appeal of hockey, but the fact that some of the players voluntarily got into the net and let others shoot pucks at them was just straight up weird. He's good, isn't he? KyouHaba startled, his gaze snapping to the grinning guy with big eyebrows KyouHaba had seen hanging around with Kyotani quite often. He couldn't recall his name, but judging by the way he acted, he must have been pretty important in the team. He cleared his throat. Yes, I guess he is. Not that I can judge that, of course. The guy leaned a bit closer, lowering his voice into half-inconspicuous whispering. They don't call him Mad Dog for no reason, you know. I hope he isn't going too wild on you. KyouHaba almost choked on the air, his face heating up. No offense, but that's not really your business, right? The other chuckled. None taken. I just can't help it, you know. He's a sweet guy, despite how he may seem. Just a bit socially awkward sometimes. Especially around pretty guys like you. I wanted to make sure he's doing alright. That you are both doing alright. KyouHaba let out a small, relieved breath. He was worried for a moment he was dealing with some creep, but he could appreciate care towards one's teammates. I can't speak for him, but I'm glad I met him. Really. He's been really kind the whole time. The other nodded, apparently satisfied. That's good to hear. He seems much more lively now in terms of off-ice interactions, which I always like to see. He sighed and glanced over at Kyotani. He's been putting too much into hockey and forgot to live outside of it since his dad passed. I'm glad he can now think about something else.
Matsukawa, you're next. Get your ass here.
The guy, Matsukawa, chuckled and nodded at KyouHaba. Nice to chat with you. Good luck with our Kyo. KyouHaba snickered, watching Kyotani throwing eye daggers at his teammate. He waved at the blonde, whose face immediately softened as he waved back. He stayed sitting on the bench for the rest of the hockey practice, following Kyotani with his eyes. He was doing great, even his coach praised him for good work at the end, which made Kyotani beam with pride, similar to what KyouHaba saw back on their first date when Kyotani got him the plushie. It made his heart flutter. He thought he couldn't compete with hockey in Kyotani's head, but watching Kyotani now, he might be closing up to second place. Nothing would make him happier than if that was the truth. Maybe getting on the Olympics with his team, but that was different. Their eyes locked for a moment, and KyouHaba shivered slightly under the fiery gaze. He got up and went to wait for the blonde by the exit from the rink. Matsukawa winked at him as he walked around, leaning in to whisper. He was really showing out today with you watching. Kyotani growled at him, and he quickly cleared the path, snickering quietly. Don't mind him. He just likes to put his nose into things he shouldn't.
KyouHaba smiled and lightly bumped Kyotane's shoulder. I think it's nice he cares about your well-being.
As if he's just nosy, that's all.
KyouHaba rolled his eyes, not missing the fond look in Kyotane's eyes. He kinda wanted to poke into it a bit more, but then decided against it. Are you much tired after the practice?
Kyotane raised his eyebrow. Do you have something in mind?
Kinda. He shuffled his foot on the ground, his hand instinctively reaching up to tug on his hair. I was wondering if you would want to try to play with me.
Kyotane grabbed his wrist, guiding it away from his hair. Play with you? In what sense?
KyouHaba's face warmed up when he realized how his offer could sound. I mean curling. I didn't get to move around too much today, and I'd like to show you it's not that boring as you think it is. He was painfully aware this might not be the greatest idea for a kind of date, since Kyotane seemed really fired up today, but he still wanted to try. It was just a suggestion after all, right? Nothing horrible if he refused. They could still go to that cafe. If Kyotane had time. Did he have time? He didn't even ask. Kyotane tilted his head and checked the big clock above the exit.
Isn't the stadium closing in like half an hour?
I have keys, and the cleaning isn't coming until 10 PM. We have plenty of time. If you want, of course. If you have somewhere to be, it's fine. We can play another time. Or never, if it's not for you.
Kyotane chuckled, and a big stone fell from KyouHaba's heart. I'd love to try playing with you, but I don't have those super slidey shoes you use.
I can borrow you my spare. I think we have about the same shoe size. It should be fine. But you should probably change into something less bulky than your gear.
Kyotane squeezed his hand he was still holding and motioned towards the changing rooms. Okay, give me 10 minutes. Who exactly invented this?
KyouHaba stifled a laugh, watching Kyotane trying to get used to sliding on only one foot. The blonde sputtered and wavered again as he instinctively tried to push himself to slide on the non-sliding shoe and almost face-planted on the ice. Amused, KyouHaba offered him his hand to help him stabilize himself a bit. Just imagine you have only one skate. That happens sometimes, right? That you lose a blade and have to get on the bench.
Kyotane raised his eyebrows at him. So you watched hockey before?
KyouHaba looked away, busying himself with the stones so he wouldn't have to look at the other. Sometimes. Long time ago. I haven't seen a single video or match for the last 3 years. He prayed Kyotane wouldn't ask further about it. He really didn't want to talk about the past and possibly ruin the moment. Fortunately, Kyotane seemed to sense his feelings and just nodded, turning his focus back to his movement until he finally joined KyouHaba by the hack.
So, what exactly is the point of this game?
KyouHaba pushed 2 stones to him while pushing aside 2 for himself. Point is to get the stones closer to the circles than your opponent. It doesn't matter how close, just closer than the other team. Simply said, it's similar to petanque, just on ice. And you don't throw the stones.
Kyotane hummed and pushed one of the stones around a bit. So, even if my stone ends up at the blue circle, as long as yours ends up outside of the target thingy, I still get the point, right?
Yes, exactly. That's when takeouts and guards come to play, but that's not important for you to know right now. He prepared his first stone. Do you want to try it? We don't have anyone to sweep for us, but it still can be fun. I'll give you the first shot. Kyotani nodded, the competitive fire burning in his eyes. KyouHaba gently corrected his posture and stepped back a bit, watching as Kyotani's eyes focused on the circles on the other side of the line, and his brow furrowed with concentration. Any other rule I should know about? You should release the stone before the hog line, the last one behind the circles from this side, but that's not that important for you. Also make it spin when you release it. Just push the handle a bit. And don't go over the last line, because then it's out of play and doesn't count. Kyotani nodded again and pushed himself off the hack. KyouHaba watched the stone slide over the line, feeling a bit like a proud father when it stopped on the blue circle. That's a great one. Great one for my first ever attempt, you mean? Still, KyouHaba rejoiced upon seeing the way Kyotani's chest slightly puffed out after his words. Is it your turn now, or do I send the other one too? Send the other one. Then I'll show you how it's done. Kyotani grinned. Bring it on. His second stone stopped just on the line between blue and white circles, and KyouHaba couldn't help but be impressed. He could even see the slight curve the second stone did, even though it was probably unintentional on Kyotani's part. He didn't forget to praise Kyotani's aim, the happy glint in his eyes being the best reward for him. He wasn't worried anymore if he made a mistake by making the other play with him, and just focused on having fun. He sent his first stone intentionally to Kyotani's second, with just enough force the stone stopped right in front of it. He saw Kyotani tilting his head from the corner of his eye, and inwardly snickered. Oh, just you wait. Kyotani's eyes widened as his second stone bumped into his first, knocking Kyotani's second out behind the back line, and pushing his first into the center. What the heck? How did you... What? KyouHaba grinned with satisfaction. Don't be so surprised. I play second. I have to be good at takeouts. Huh. No wonder you can aim with your shoes so well. How long did it take you to get this good? KyouHaba's cheeks flared up. I'm not that good. I haven't been playing for that long. Some people I met at competitions have been playing since childhood. Watare, or Skip for example. I can't measure to them at all. Kyotani hummed, and KyouHaba soon found himself being tucked closer to the other. He didn't fight it, his heart beating faster when the strong arms wrapped loosely around his sides. Is this okay? He nodded, biting his lip before he put his arms around Kyotani's shoulders, clutching to his shirt. Kyotani pulled him closer until their chests were touching, his breath ghosting over his skin, and KyouHaba shivered when he spoke up again. You should be proud of what you can do. I can imagine how much work you put into this. There's no shame in telling yourself you are good. KyouHaba blinked, surprised to hear that from Kyotani, but then smiled, the pleasant warm feeling spreading in his chest. He leaned in to let their foreheads touch. Thank you. It means a lot that you think so. What do you say we play another round? Kyotani chuckled and pressed a short kiss on KyouHaba's lips. Watch as I destroy you this time. They played a few more rounds, all of which KyouHaba won. He was worried that Kyotani could get discouraged by the losses, but the fire burning in the amber eyes proved him wrong. And when Kyotani stated he had a great time while they were cleaning, all his remaining worries dissipated like smoke. Even if Kyotani still thought curling was boring beyond measure, at least they spent a nice time together. That was all he wished for. He walked outside the stadium to wait for Kyotani to collect his things, huddled into his scarf and coat as the winter breeze bit his skin. A thought that perhaps he should have stayed inside or gone with Kyotani into the changing room crossed his mind. After all, there wasn't anyone else except for them,
and Kyotane was already dressed to go home, so it wouldn't be that weird. He was just about to go back when an all too familiar voice froze him in place. "Here you are. Took you quite long." After the initial freeze of his body worn off, KyouHaba clenched his jaw and turned around to face the other man, his heart starting to beat faster for all the wrong reasons. There was little to no change in Kaito's face in the last 3 and something years. He still looked as handsome and proud as before, but KyouHaba knew better than to fall for the first impression. "What are you doing here?" Smiling, Kaito pushed himself off the wall and put out the cigarette in his fingers. "I was waiting for you." "Why? I told you clearly I don't want to see you again. Nothing changed since then." Kaito sighed and walked closer, making KyouHaba take a step back. "Look, I know I made a mistake, but it's been a long time and..." KyouHaba huffed a humorless, incredulous laugh. The damn audacity. "Mistake? Are you kidding me? You cheated on me several times, then tried to blame me for it, and you call that a mistake?" "Oh, come on, Shigeru. I'm a different man now, I swear. And I still love you. Can't you give me another chance?" "Another chance? You can't be serious right now. You really think I want to repeat everything? All the nagging and criticizing of everything I did? Nothing was good enough for you. When you were there for me, huh? You always just talk me down, in front of your friends, your family. Don't think I don't know how you talked about me when you thought I didn't hear you. Did you ever ask what I want? It was always you first. And then you left me when I needed you the most, just because I couldn't sleep with you." "Well, I mean, it's a pretty important part of the relationship, so..." He shrugged, making KyouHaba's blood boil. "I was on a wheelchair, you asshole! I needed your support, and you just left me behind like a broken toy. Though I doubt I was ever more to you than some freaking toy." "Don't say that, Shige. I still love you." "But I don't. Go to whoever you fuck right now and leave me alone. I don't want to see you ever again." He flinched when Kaito narrowed his eyes at him and walked closer, his whole posture suddenly changing. "Why don't you want to give me a chance?" KyouHaba stepped back, his heart jumping into his throat when his back hit the wall. He thought of bolting to the door to try and get inside of the stadium, but Kaito's arms caged him to the wall. He gritted his teeth and tried to shove Kaito away, but the other didn't budge. "Fuck off! Leave me alone!" Kaito leaned closer and KyouHaba's blood ran cold. "I know you still love me." KyouHaba's yelp got silenced by Kaito's lips pressed hard against his own. He pulled on all his strength and tried to push the man away, but he knew he had only a little chance against someone Kaito's size. As the last desperate attempt to get rid of him, he took a swing aimed at Kaito's face. It was a weak hit, but it served the purpose and broke the kiss, allowing him to gasp for air and push Kaito further away, only to get smashed into the wall again. "Why do you always make things so difficult?" KyouHaba instinctively covered before the raised arm, squeezing his eyes shut against the incoming pain. But instead, he heard fast approaching footsteps, and then everything holding him by the wall disappeared as Kaito stumbled backwards, landing harshly on the ground. Kyotane no less than growled at him, positioning himself between KyouHaba and danger. "Touch him again and I'll break every damn bone in your body." Kaito's eyes darted between them before he gritted his teeth. "Huh, so you already found a new one to fuck you? I thought you had a better taste, Shige." Apparently unbothered by the jab, Kyotane bared his teeth at him. "Get lost, or I'll call cops on your sorry ass." Kaito slowly scrambled to his feet and pierced KyouHaba with his eyes. Kyotane shoved him away, still shielding KyouHaba with his body. "Get lost." We aren't done yet, Shige.
KyouHaba shivered, but managed to stand his ground. Despite that, his voice still came out much weaker than he intended. We were done the second you decided I'm not worth the wait. They both watched as Kaito disappeared into the dark, before KyouHaba let out a shuddered breath and harshly wiped off his mouth, suppressing the sudden urge to throw up. Kyotani turned to him, deep concern written in his eyes. Are you okay? KyouHaba managed to just shake his head before he threw his arms around Kyotani's neck and buried his face in his shoulder, feeling his hands and knees trembling. Strong arms were immediately firmly around him, surrounding him with all the warmth and safety he could need. And he needed a lot. Thank you. Kyotani hugged him a bit tighter, rubbing calming circles into his back. Don't mention it. Do you want me to drop you off somewhere? I have my car here. Can you get me home? Please? Kyotani nodded and gently ran his thumbs along KyouHaba's cheekbones, making him realize he was crying. Sure, come on. Kyotani wasn't sure what exactly to do while they walked to his car. Part of his mind was telling him to try to comfort KyouHaba with a hug or something of that nature, but the other part practically screamed at him not to do that, since KyouHaba just got touched against his will, and more touch could make everything worse. So he just awkwardly stuck his hands into his pockets, but kept close to KyouHaba's side, hoping his presence served at least as a silent support. Now that he met who he supposed was KyouHaba's ex, he finally fully understood the cues about hockey players. And he wasn't surprised. He met the guy a few years ago in a match, and even back then, it only took him one shift change to realize he was a piece of shit. Apparently on and off ice alike. No wonder KyouHaba's friends wanted to protect him from another hockey player who might act the same way to him. He growled under his breath, a sudden urge to go after the guy and tear him to shreds taking over his mind for a hot second. How even dare you, you fucker? But KyouHaba needed him close more than revenge. At least he thought so. The man was quiet the whole walk, staring into the ground and only raising his gaze when they arrived to the car to sit down without colliding with the door. How far from here do you live? KyouHaba blinked and looked around slightly confused, as if he had to remind himself where he was. About 20 minutes. You don't have to drive me the whole way if that's too much of a bother. I can get home by train like always. Oh no, that's not the problem. I don't have anywhere to be anyway. I was just thinking, does he know where you live? He didn't miss the way KyouHaba shivered and cursed inwardly. I don't know. He might. I didn't tell him we trained here and he might have found out where I live too. Then, do you think it's a good idea to go there? KyouHaba curled more into himself, clutching onto the safety belt. I have nowhere else to go. All the others are out of the city for the rest of the week because of the play break. He clenched his jaw. It will be fine. I can manage. Kyotani wasn't sure who was KyouHaba trying to convince more, but it sure as hell wasn't working. And if he was honest, he didn't like leaving KyouHaba alone either. No matter whether his asshole of an ex knew where he lived, KyouHaba was clearly distressed, and Kyotani was worried he might hurt himself considering he always tugged on his hair when he was nervous. You can stay with me. Only if you want to, of course. I don't want you to think I'm using the situation to do anything. I'm just worried. I don't want him to hurt you again. He risked a glance at KyouHaba, wondering if he just crossed all boundaries. KyouHaba was watching him with wide eyes and slightly parted lips,
which definitely shouldn't be so damn attractive, especially given the situation. You wouldn't mind? Kyotani shrugged as if his heart didn't just do a somersault in his chest. I think I would actually be more at peace than if I left you alone in this state. It's not a big flat, but I'm sure we can fit in without much issue. And before you ask, no, you won't be a bother. KyouHaba averted his gaze for a moment before he gave Kyotani a small, grateful smile. Alright then. Thank you. They arrived in Kyotani's flat about half an hour later. KyouHaba was still much quieter than usual during the ride, but at least he didn't seem like he was about to shut down any moment. On the contrary, he looked genuinely curious when he walked through the door of Kyotani's apartment, his eyes darting over the living room area. Kyotani cringed a bit at the mess he left this morning when he rushed to the practice, but KyouHaba didn't seem to mind much, a soft smile tucking in the corner of his mouth when he spotted the photos on the shelf by the TV. He motioned to the one with little Kyotani and an older man with hockey sticks in hands on a frozen pond. Your dad? Yeah. It's from the day he took me to play for the first time with some of his friends. He smiled, remembering how happy he was when he scored his first goal. I guess even he didn't expect I would get into it this much. KyouHaba's face softened as he bowed his head slightly in front of the photo. He had to be really proud of you. I bet he's still cheering you on when you play. Perhaps. He cleared his throat, shooing away the bittersweet memories of his father. Are you hungry? I have some leftovers from yesterday, if you don't mind that. I wasn't expecting a visit, so I didn't go shopping, but it's solid. You can eat while I prepare the bed for you. KyouHaba furrowed his brow, looking at the only door leading from the living room. And where are you going to sleep? I'll take the couch. What? No way. It's your place. I can't just take your bed. It's enough of a bother for you to let me stay here. I can't kick you out of your bedroom too. KyouHaba. I'm serious. Just give me a pillow and some blanket and I'm fine. I'm not letting you sleep on the couch. I'm not letting you sleep on the couch. Kyotani sighed. Then what do you suggest? You are a guest and you are not sleeping on the couch or on the ground. My final word. Then we can share. Kyotani raised his eyebrow in surprise, and KyouHaba avoided his gaze, nervously fidgeting with his fingers. I mean, if you are okay with it. It's fine if you aren't. It's your bed and... I'm sorry, I shouldn't have just thrown it at you. It's... He stuttered and then fell silent as Kyotani held his hands, keeping the grip loose in case he was uncomfortable. He did indeed tense a bit, but didn't make any attempt to move away, not even when Kyotani pushed a stray strand of hair from his forehead and lifted his chin to make him look up. Are you sure? I don't want you to be uncomfortable just because you are stubborn about the sleeping situation. KyouHaba nodded, his cheeks coloring a light red. I trust you. I know you wouldn't take advantage of the situation. Or me. Humming, Kyotani squeezed KyouHaba's hand in reassurance while he simultaneously tried to ignore his racing heart. He wasn't sure if he was more nervous or excited, probably both the same amount. Of course, he wished the situation leading to them sharing a bed was utterly different, but as long as KyouHaba was okay with it, he was content. Alright, but promise me that if you get uncomfortable, you'll tell me, at any point. I promise. Good. Do you have anything to sleep in? KyouHaba's face reddened even more. About that... Kyotani had to admit the sight of KyouHaba wearing his oversized t-shirt did things to him. Not in a sexual way, it was just so damn adorable. He told him so too, making him blush as he tugged on the lower edge of the t-shirt. They settled in the bed after some adjusting, their faces mere centimeters apart since they shared the pillow. From as close as they were, KyouHaba's warm breath ghosted over Kyotani's skin, the sensation sending pleasant shivers down his spine. He wondered if KyouHaba knew just how beautiful he was from this close, or how much his hair shone in the moonlight coming in through the window. Though KyouHaba was much more than just a pretty face, and Kyotani's heart swelled when he fully realized how lucky he was to meet him. And the less he could understand how his ex could see all that and still leave him behind. Did he ever took his time to get to know KyouHaba under the pretty outside? Probably not, because otherwise he would have to appreciate KyouHaba much more. He gritted his teeth. Asshole. Kyotani? He snapped out of his thoughts, meeting KyouHaba's slightly widened eyes. Are you okay? You looked really pissed for a moment. Should I move? It's fine if you... Sighing, Kyotani gently caressed his cheek, silencing his next words. After a bit of hesitation, KyouHaba leaned into his hand, and Kyotani had to resist the urge to just lean in and kiss him. I'm not mad at you, and you don't have to move because of me. I like this a lot, actually. To his surprise, KyouHaba smiled and entwined their fingers together. I like it too. Kyotani could just about melt then and there, the touch of the soft skin against his rough leaving his hand tingling. A peaceful atmosphere surrounded them despite the horde of questions still swirling in his head. He really wanted some answers, but seeing KyouHaba slowly relaxing, he decided against asking any of them. It would just ruin the moment and possibly hurt KyouHaba again since he had no idea where the limits were. So instead, he cupped his cheek, caressing his slowly warming skin with his thumb as he leaned closer, their noses brushing together. Can I kiss you? Without a word, KyouHaba fluttered his eyes shut and closed the distance between them. There were no fireworks in Kyotani's chest this time, and it wasn't any heated kiss either, but just the gentle touch of KyouHaba's soft lips on his own was enough for his mind to go completely blank. They weren't going to get further than that night, he knew, but it was okay. They had all the time in the world. He suddenly tasted salt in the kiss and pulled away a bit, his heart breaking seeing KyouHaba's eyes glinting with more than just the natural light. He gently kissed away the tears from his cheeks and wrapped his arm around his waist to pull him as close as possible. KyouHaba whimpered quietly and clutched Kyotani's t-shirt, hiding his face in his chest, his body wrenching with uncontrollable sobs. I'm sorry. Kyotani shook his head and trapped soothing patterns into KyouHaba's back and sides, leaving a kiss on his forehead. It's alright. No one will hurt you anymore. I promise. Waking up beside KyouHaba felt almost like a dream. They ended up all tangled together throughout the night, the silver hair tickling on Kyotani's neck as KyouHaba laid with his head on his chest, one leg thrown over his thigh and his arms wrapped tightly around his middle, as if he was subconsciously afraid Kyotani would leave if he let go. Unable to keep the smile off of his face, Kyotani pressed a small kiss on top of KyouHaba's head. He definitely didn't complain about their current position. It was the closest KyouHaba had been to him in the past few days. It was now the 10th day of their new sleeping over arrangement. They shared a bed every night, the only change from the first day being KyouHaba had his own clothes on. It was a tad disappointing for Kyotani since he found out quite early on he had a thing for seeing KyouHaba sleeping and walking around in his clothes,
but he understood he felt better in his own things. He had to admit they clicked together surprisingly well in the new housing situation, as if they lived together for ages. Which was great considering they still had no idea whether or not KyouHaba's ex knew where he lived, and if he wasn't waiting somewhere around to catch KyouHaba off guard again. Kyotani wouldn't put it past him, and if he could judge by the way KyouHaba constantly looked around when they went to his flat to pack some of his things, he wouldn't either. But they didn't have to worry about that now. He gently ran his thumb over KyouHaba's waist under the rolled-up t-shirt, enjoying the feeling of his calloused hand sliding over KyouHaba's soft skin, and the way the other tightened his arms around him at the touch. Just how could anyone spend time with KyouHaba and not cherish every moment, every second of it? He clenched his jaw, remembering the events of the previous night when KyouHaba broke down and told him about some of the hardships he endured during his last relationship, from the cheating to the obvious emotional abuse. And to say Kyotani was furious upon hearing about the way that bastard treated KyouHaba would be an understatement. He found himself wishing he was much more aggressive against him when they met in the matches in the past, or at least meet him in the match again, so he could explain to him properly he had no right to even come close to KyouHaba ever again. He was pretty sure he would be able to get Iwaizumi and Matsukawa on it too if he told them about it. Unfortunately, he recalled the guy had to retire a few years ago after some drug scandal involving him and some very young girls. That was after KyouHaba broke up with him apparently, but it still made Kyotani's blood boil. He looked at soundly sleeping KyouHaba in his arms and instinctively pulled him closer, his heart aching. Please tell me he didn't hurt you even more than with what you already told me. Because I will break every bone in his body if he did. KyouHaba stirred in his sleep and furrowed his brow, murmuring something Kyotani didn't catch. It was an adorable sight, and Kyotani couldn't help but lean in and kiss the crease of his forehead. He would gladly stay like this for the whole day, but a quick look at the clock told him he unfortunately had to interrupt their comfortable time if he didn't want to come late. Which he really didn't. It had been over a month since they had to move to a different stadium, and now the cooling was finally working again, meaning they could return to their home stadium. And to make it even better, they had a match there today. A bit of a bittersweet moment, since it meant he wouldn't be seeing KyouHaba at the practices anymore, but now that he literally had him in his bed, the news weren't that bad. He ran his fingers along KyouHaba's cheek, smiling when KyouHaba grumbled quietly and buried his face more into his chest. Come on, sleeping beauty, I have to get up. KyouHaba didn't move an inch. Don't wanna. I'm warm. But I will come late to practice if you keep me in bed. And? Shigeru. KyouHaba muttered something under his breath, but rubbed his eyes, throwing an accusatory look at Kyotani, which he, given the state of KyouHaba's hair and the pressed-in pattern on his cheek, couldn't take seriously. You are so cruel, you know? I thought we could spend a beautiful morning together, but now you have to leave me here alone and cold. I'll put on heating for you if you are cold. KyouHaba scrunched his nose. That's not the same. The heating is not so nice to nap at as you are. Despite that, he sat up, yawning. Kyotani chuckled and tilted KyouHaba's chin to steal a quick kiss before he jumped out of the bed and headed to the bathroom to take a shower. When he came out, KyouHaba had already prepared breakfast for them, which was another reason why Kyotani enjoyed KyouHaba's presence in his flat. He was never the type to cook breakfast, or most other foods for the matter, for himself, and rather always took some quick bite or stopped by at the convenience store for some protein snack on his way to practice. But now that KyouHaba was cooking for them, repaying Kyotani for letting him stay according to his words, He realized how much he missed calm, homemade meals. It almost felt like they were living together for real, the domestic atmosphere making his heart all soft. He glanced at KyouHaba as he slowly munched on the rice and eggs, contemplating whether it was a good time to break the news to him about the match. He had invited KyouHaba to 2 of his previous matches, which were happening in the cities right next to theirs, but got rejected on both occasions. He knew KyouHaba wasn't very fond of hockey, but surely he already made it clear that not all hockey players are the same, and surely KyouHaba could survive 1 game for his... What even are we? As if feeling his gaze on him, KyouHaba looked up from his meal, tilting his head. Is something wrong? You haven't eaten almost anything. Are you not hungry? Gyotani shook his head. No, I was thinking. Our home stadium is functioning again, so we are having practice there from today on. Oh, but that's a good thing, isn't it? You'll have your space again and your ring. Kinda bummer we won't see each other in our stadium, but that's fine now that we are here, right? Gyotani chuckled softly and leaned over the table to cover KyouHaba's hand with his. Yeah, though I will miss seeing you in that nice sportswear you have on during practices. KyouHaba narrowed his eyes at him, huffing, but Gyotani didn't miss the light pink tint on his cheeks. He cleared his throat, becoming a bit more serious. And I'm not really going to practice. We have a match there today, so I thought you could come and watch now that it's close from here. KyouHaba stilled and pulled his hand from under Gyotani's, tension seeping from his voice when he spoke. I told you I haven't watched a single hockey game for the last 3 years, and I don't plan on changing that. Why are you still asking me? Gyotani clenched his jaw. Because I thought you could at least give it a shot. For me. I'm not asking you to come to my every game. I just want you to try and see hockey isn't just about roughing. Is it that much of a problem for you? Yes! I'm not going to watch something I hate just because of you. You said you don't hate it. What changed? Nothing. That's the thing. Nothing changed. I like you as a person, but that hockey part of you still brings memories I would rather forget, and I hate it, so stop asking me to come and watch! Gyotani clenched his fists and abruptly got up from the table, almost knocking off the vase from it. KyouHaba flinched, sending an arrow of guilt through Gyotani's chest before it was replaced by low, bubbling irritation. It seemed that he was wrong about KyouHaba being more open-minded. Apparently, he was wrong about a lot of things. Where are you going? Stadium. He quickly grabbed his gear bag and headed to the door, not wanting to lash out on KyouHaba, no matter how much he might deserve it. So you are just going to leave? How mature of you! Gyotani stopped and turned to KyouHaba, who, despite his words, looked genuinely distressed. I already told you hockey is my life. I'm not going to give up on it, not even because of you. If you aren't able to at least respect that, then this relationship, whatever it is right now, isn't going to work out. KyouHaba opened and closed his mouth without any words coming out for a while, his eyes widening. Are you? I'm out. Don't wait for me. With that, he slammed the door behind him. He could feel Iwaizume's and Matsukawa's eyes on him the whole time they were gearing up, but he didn't care. He knew he said what had to be said, and that it was true. If KyouHaba wasn't going to accept him as a whole person, hockey and everything, then they were bound to crash sooner or later. Unfortunately, it did happen sooner. KyouHaba held resentment to hockey. He understood that. But why couldn't he at least try and see things from his perspective too? One game was all he asked for. If he said he still didn't like it, he wouldn't pressure him. But KyouHaba didn't want to do even that little for him. He hated giving KyouHaba an ultimatum. The man went through a lot and deserved to be protected and cared for. But was it even possible to stay in a relationship with someone who hated what he dedicated his life to?
Kyotani?
He raised his eyes, meeting with Iwaizumi's concerned gaze.
Are you okay? You haven't said a word since you came here.
He nodded, even though he knew Iwaizumi could read in him like in a book.
I'm fine. Just thinking.
Did something happen between you and the curling guy? I thought you said your living together setup works well.
Kyotani sighed, rubbing his face.
He really didn't want to discuss his love life in the changing cabin, but if there was someone who could help him, or at least hear him out, it were his captains. He glanced around his other teammates and back at Iwaizumi, who nodded in understanding.
Alright guys, get out on the ice for warm-ups. Who's going to mess around will run 10 rounds around the stadium after the match. Chop chop.
There was a lot of grumbling, but after a while, the room went quiet.
So, what happened? We argued about hockey and stuff. I know he said he doesn't like hockey, but I thought he might at least try to understand it when we got together. Sort of. But he doesn't even want to give it me a chance to show him it's not that bad. And I don't know what to do. I don't want to send him away, but I don't know.
Matsukawa hummed, tapping his fingers on the bench. Did he tell you why he doesn't like hockey?
No, just that he thinks it's violent. We didn't talk about it since then. Until now.
He hid his face in his palms, muffling the frustrated shout he let out.
Why does it have to come to this? I do love him, okay? I don't want him to feel like he's less in my head than hockey, but if he can't accept the biggest part of me, then what's the point of getting more serious?
Matsukawa squeezed his shoulder. Give him time. And to yourself too. It's apparently a sensitive topic for both of you, and you will have to talk it out eventually. But right now, you are both angry and it wouldn't end well. But I'm sure he loves you as much as you love him. And he was watching some of our practices, so that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, let it be for today and talk about it in the evening. Just don't go to sleep angry at each other. That's never a good thing.
Kyotani sighed, thinking about their words. He grabbed his stick and the rest of his gear, deciding to wait until after the match. That should be enough time for both of them to cool off, right? As it turned out, it wasn't that easy. Kyotani always praised his ability to split personal stuff from his in-game mind, but for some reason, he just couldn't focus on the match properly that day. He felt like a zombie. He knew he was spacing out during the coach talks. He knew the shift changes took him longer than they should have. But it all just felt wrong. He couldn't feel the usual joy when his blades hit the ice, when he skated towards the puck. Nothing made his heart speed up with excitement as it usually did. He was playing horribly, and the fact coach moved him to the fourth line after the first third of the game was enough of a proof of that. Why did the fact that KyouHaba refused to share at least one moment of the game with him have such a huge effect on him?
No matter what you choose, you will lose one thing you love for the sake of the other. He gritted his teeth and got ready for his shift. He noticed their opponents sped up their shifts, meaning they were now against their first line. That's bad. Focus, damn it! This is not the time to wallow in self-pity. After their shift got into great problems around their gate, one of his teammates managed to finally get the puck out of their defensive zone. Kyotani cursed under his breath, saying it was going to be icing if he didn't do anything about it, meaning they wouldn't help themselves at all. Kicking his legs to work, he sprinted after the puck at the highest speed he could muster, outskating the opponent right in front of the gate, when he suddenly lost balance, got a glimpse of the boards, and then everything went black. This wasn't the way he imagined his morning to go. He flinched as the door slammed close, unwanted memories flooding his mind. Things were supposed to be different now. They were supposed to have a nice breakfast together before Kyotani would go to practice and KyouHaba would wait for him. Why did it have to go so wrong? He slumped on the chair, hiding his face in his palms. Why couldn't Kyotani understand he couldn't like hockey anymore? Not after everything. Not after the memories of the boards and waking up in the hospital, unable to move his legs. And not after his ex-boyfriend. Why did the person he liked have to be dedicated to a sport he couldn't even look at? He would love to go and cheer on Kyotani. He would love to be there at the stadium and celebrate his goals and wins. But he couldn't. The constant sight of bodies hitting the ice, one another, and boards making him nauseous and cold. He didn't mean to yell. He didn't want to argue with Kyotani, especially after how much the man did for him. But all his fears came crashing into him, causing him to lose his temper over something that could be, under normal circumstances, dealt with by a calm talk. But there was nothing normal about this. He grabbed his phone, calling his most used contact. Yep, listening. I think I fucked up. Huh? With what? Don't tell me you accidentally recolored his laundry or something. What? No, he left the flat. Quite angry, I would say. Did you two argue? Yeah, he invited me to his match today. And doesn't it start in like 5 minutes or so? KyouHaba furrowed his brow and Watari sighed. I can tell what you are thinking. My girlfriend is their fan, so we are watching it on TV. But shouldn't you be there too if we invited you? You know, cheering on your boyfriend and stuff. He's not my boyfriend. And I told him I won't come. What? Why? Because I don't need to see a bunch of people pushing each other around, racing after a small black thing. Watari let out a long, exasperated sigh. Oh my god, Shigeru, you can be such an idiot sometimes, you know. Shinji, you know why I don't want to go. Why I don't want to see a hockey match ever again. I'm not going to change my mind just because I... He stopped. Wasn't it a bit early to say that? He could feel Watari on the other end raising his eyebrow. Because you what? Because I love him. And he loves you. But he clearly loves hockey too, and apparently wants to share that love with you. You said it yourself. He's kind and you feel safe with him, so that's one of your problems with hockey out of the way. And they have much better protection gear than you had, so the injuries aren't that often, so that's the second problem out. It's not that easy, Shinji. Fine, I admit I'm simplifying it, but my point stands. If you at least gave it a shot. But no, you have to shoot him down like this. He tried curling with you because he knows you love it, so why can't you do the same for him? KyouHaba rubbed his eyes. He knew Wataru was right. He knew Kyotane was right to be angry with him. But he was also right in his way. Neither of them could feel what he felt when he just about watched the ice ring, the helplessness and fear and pain all over again as if it all happened just a week ago. He couldn't just forget that, no matter how much he loved Kyotane. Was it selfish from him? Probably. He looked up, his gaze falling on the framed photo of Kyotane and his dad on the pond, on the happy smile Kyotane had on his face when he held his hockey stick, and the proud look in his father's eyes. It probably makes him feel closer to his dad when he's on the ice, playing. He mentally kicked himself. He observed Kyotane was really fond of his father, but he never put it together. And now he refused to share the happiness Kyotane felt just because of his stupid fears. He would gladly bang his head on the table. How could you mess up so bad? He checked the clock and grabbed his coat and scarf. I have to go. Thanks for the talk. Yeah, no worries. Go get your man and talk properly, okay? I'm sure he will understand if you tell him the whole story. I will, thank you. He ended the call, hopping on one leg to get his shoes on. He locked the door and ran on the bus to the stadium, already looking up the tickets for sale. He managed to get one ticket for standing at the last minute and raced to the entrance, cursing the delayed bus. A quick glance at the clock told him the match was in the second third already, so there went his chance to speak with Kyotane before the game. He was sure he wouldn't be allowed into the cabins, which meant he would have to catch up with him after the match ends. He took a deep breath walking into the stands, the cheering of the spectators almost deafening him as he walked in right as one team scored. It had been a long time since he entered a hockey stadium, and cold shivers ran down his spine seeing the players hitting the boards. He quickly moved to the space for standing and tried to catch up with the game, trying not to focus too much on the physical aspect of it. Kentaro said there's more to it, so there has to be more to it. Speaking of the devil, he spotted Kyotane's number 16 on the ice now in the defense. He furrowed his brow. Kyotane's movement was much slower than how he remembered it from the practices. There was no drive in his skating, nothing from his typical ferocity. As if he didn't even want to be there. As if he's not enjoying it at all. His heart sank. Was this the result of their argument? It had to be, unless some horrible news came through in the meantime. You always took so much pride in skating, so much joy. Where is it now? Where did it go? He clenched his fists as the Aoba Josai team went into heavy defense. Come on, switch back on, please. This is what you love. You can't let it slip away now. You can't let the joy run out. As if Kyotane heard his thoughts, he suddenly picked up speed and sprinted over the lines, chasing after the puck. KyouHaba held his breath, silently pushing Kyotane to go faster, when his opponent, in the attempt to poke-check the puck, hooked the stick in Kyotane's skates. In the same moment, Kyotane lost his balance and crashed headfirst into the boards. The whole stadium hummed and then fell eerily silent. KyouHaba's heart stopped, his blood running cold as he watched Kyotane sag on the ice like a rag doll, and the players on the ice immediately calling for medical assistance. Frozen in place, he just stared at the people, players and medics alike, gathered around Kyotane's motionless form. All the memories, fears and helplessness crashing into him like a truck and knocking the air out of his lungs. Please no, this can't be happening. Please be okay. Give the thumbs up. Please. The medics carefully hauled Kyotane up onto the stretchers, moving him off the ice. There was no sign from him. No thumbs up, meaning he was at least conscious. The ground swayed under KyouHaba's feet. He broke out of the stupor and sprinted to the exit and out of the stadium to look for the place where ambulance cars were usually parked. However, when he finally got there, he only saw the blinking blue lights at the other end of the parking lot. Damn it! He raked his fingers through his hair, his breath ragged and frantic. Someone has to know something. Someone. He fumbled with his phone, looking for the old contact. Oikawa picked up almost immediately, as if he had the phone ready in hand. Haba-chan, where are you? There's been... You have to help me, please. I need to know where... How is... You know their captain, please. Someone has to know something. Haba. Please, I need to go to him. Shigeru. Haba shut up, a strangled sob escaping his throat. He hastily wiped his eyes. It's my fault. If I didn't say all those things, he would... Haba, breathe, okay? Tell me where you are, I'll come too. The back of the stadium. I wanted to go, but they were gone and... Alright, stay there, okay? Take deep breaths, I'll be there in a minute. KyouHaba nodded, even though he knew Oikawa couldn't see him. He ended the call and hugged his middle, trying in vain to block all the horror scenarios his mind was supplying him with. This isn't happening. Please tell me it's just some horrid dream. Please. He felt absolutely overwhelmed, all the emotions crashing into him in waves, not giving him time to breathe. He knew he was panicking, but he couldn't stop it. The scene from Ice was firmly engraved into his mind, replaying it to him on repeat, over and over again. His stomach rolled when he recalled the hollow bank when Kiltanis had collided with the boards, the way his body just sat on the ice like a ragdoll, the silence, the absolute silence when... He didn't hear Oikawa coming until the man squeezed his shoulder. Tears spilled from his eyes as his former rival hugged him firmly, murmuring quiet reassurances into his ear. It will be fine, Haba-chan. I'm sure he will be okay. But it's my fault. He wasn't focused and it was my fault. If I just... Shh. That's not true. Things like this happen sometimes. You can't really do anything about it. But we argued and now he's hurt. He wasn't conscious when they... What if he did something to his neck? Or head? What if he won't be able to play anymore? It's his life. He can't... He would be so shattered if... Haba, stop blaming yourself. Hockey is a tough game. They know it. Nothing is without risk. You know that better than most. I didn't even get to apologize. What if he gets amnesia or something and forgets everything? I can't lose him. Not like this. Oikawa squeezed his arms, his eyes firm enough for KyouHaba to stop rambling. That won't happen, okay? He's a strong guy. He'll make it just fine. I know it. Now take a deep breath. KyouHaba took a shattered breath, following Oikawa's example. He dug his nails into his forearm, feeling his lower lip and hands trembling. But the breathing helped at least a bit, and he could feel the panic slowly calming down, leaving just fear and guilt swirling in his chest. He wiped his eyes, his fingers straying into his hair, tugging and pulling. Oikawa grabbed his wrist and guided his hand from his scalp. You should stop doing this. You'll hurt yourself. That's the point. He gritted his teeth, mentally cursing himself for sliding into the old wrong mindset. He sighed and lowered his gaze. I know. Sorry. Oikawa smiled. Good.
It will be fine. I'll call Hajime. He should have at least some info. They ended the match early, so they should already be changing. KyouHaba nodded absent-mindedly, not taking his eyes off the ground. I'm so sorry, Kentaro. Please be okay. It didn't take long before the captain of the hockey team, Iwaizumi, KyouHaba recalled, rushed out of the stadium's back exit, nodding at KyouHaba and giving a quick kiss to Oikawa. I don't know much, just that they are suspecting concussion and that he hasn't woken up yet, but nothing specific. KyouHaba's head spun, his vision blurring. He wasn't focused, right? That's why it happened. Iwaizumi sighed and squeezed his shoulder. No, it's not. He could let the puck go, but he chose to chase it. He couldn't know the other guy would try to poke the puck out. He might have been a bit out of it because you argued, but that's not the reason this happened, so don't blame yourself, okay? He zipped up his jacket and motioned for them to follow. Let's go. I know which hospital they took him to. They should get there in a few minutes. Oikawa draped his arm over KyouHaba's shoulders, carefully steering him to one of the cars. KyouHaba, moving on autopilot, let himself be led forward. His chest constricted as he walked through the hospital door. He hated hospitals and avoided them as much as he could. Everything reminded him of that stupid wheelchair he spent a whole year on, of the countless hours of waiting, fearing, and hoping. Waiting for the results of his latest surgery. Fearing it was all useless and he won't ever walk again. Hoping it would all end soon, one way or another. He swallowed hard when he noticed one of the patients being rolled around in a wheelchair, and quickly followed Oikawa and Iwaizumi, trying not to think about the past too much. He was there to see Kyotani, to make sure he was alright and see if there was hope he could maybe soothe things between them. If he doesn't hate you already. His mind helpfully replayed Kyotani's words to him. If you aren't able to at least respect that, then this relationship isn't going to work out. He clenched his fists to stop them from straying to his hair again. There was a high chance Kyotani wouldn't want to have anything with him anymore. His words could be just a warning as well as a full breakup of everything they had between them. He knew that. Maybe it would be better if he just left after getting some information, so Kyotani wouldn't be more stressed than necessary. It would probably be for the best. He wasn't. Haba? KyouHaba. Haba-chan, wake up! He snapped out of his thoughts, his gaze meeting with Oikawa's, who was watching him with deep concern. He glanced around, realizing they were already in the hallways with doors leading to the rooms. His chest clenched when he spotted Iwaizumi talking with a doctor. What's happening? Oikawa gave him a bright smile. They said he woke up just a few minutes ago for a moment. He's sleeping again now, but we can go to see him. KyouHaba let out a relieved breath, a ginormous rock dropping from his heart. If Kyotani was already put in a normal room, it meant he didn't need any serious surgery. Did they say what is with him? No, they don't want to tell us because we aren't his family members. Hajime is trying to convince this guy you are Kyotani's partner, so he tells us at least something. KyouHaba felt his cheeks heating up and the pit in his stomach growing. They weren't partners. They weren't boyfriends or lovers. What even were they? Could he even call it a breakup if Kyotani decided to end things between them? Probably not. Oikawa tapped on his shoulder and nodded towards the other two men. Seems like Hajime got something. Come on. The doctor measured him dubiously, but it seemed like he decided to take pity on them. According to him, Kyotane suffered a concussion, and there was no saying whether or not the hit didn't damage something in his brain, but the X-ray only showed a small fracture in one of his vertebrae in the neck area, which would take some convalescence, but wasn't at risk of damaging the spinal cord. KyouHaba couldn't remember the last time he wanted to cry from relief more than at that moment. It meant Kyotane would be able to walk normally and possibly still play when he got better, though he wasn't sure if he would be allowed to see it. They were allowed to the room after a long lecture about not stressing out the patient and causing any ruckus. KyouHaba bit his lip hard as they walked into the room, blinking away the mist entering his vision. Even though he knew Kyotane wasn't in immediate danger to his life, the sight of the man he loved lying motionless except for his slowly rising and falling chest was a bit too much for his heart to handle. He sat on one of the chairs, clasping his hands between his knees, lost on what to do. He wished nothing more than to take Kyotane's hand in his and squeeze it in reassurance and as a reminder he was here for him if he needed it. But did he even have the right to do that? Fuck it. He moved closer and ran his fingers over the back of Kyotane's hand before squeezing it lightly, caressing his knuckles with his thumb. He just needed to see Kyotane healthy again. That was all that mattered. And if the only time he would be able to see him was on TV in the future, so be it. Please, just be alright. That's all I want. Please. He got jolted awake by a weak grip tightening around his fingers. He looked around in panic, noticing Iwaizumi and Oikawa were gone. What was more important, however, were Kyotane's eyes fluttering open. He bit his lip to silence the happy scream that wanted to be let out, and instead returned the squeeze. Kentaro. Kyotane blinked a few times, his eyes roaming around the room before they stopped at KyouHaba. Shige, what are you? KyouHaba averted his gaze, staring instead on their connected hands to prevent Kyotane from seeing the tears forming in his eyes. I was worried about you. You cost me a few grey hair, you know. How can you tell? They are already silver. KyouHaba let out a strangled chuckle. True. Kyotane shifted a bit, groaning as he freed his hand from KyouHaba's grip and held it to his head, his face scrunching in pain. What happened? KyouHaba clasped his hands together, awkwardly playing with his fingers while still avoiding looking at the other. You hit the boards, after you went after the puck, and the other guy accidentally tripped you. The doctor said you have a concussion and some small fracture in your neck, but it shouldn't cause any problems. He paused, his heart sinking. Your captain is here too. At least he was here before. I guess they just went for coffee or something. There was a short silence before Kyotane hummed and tapped his fingers on the bed, seemingly deep in thoughts. Did Iwaizumi call you? No, I was there when it happened. I saw it. He took a deep breath and hesitantly met Kyotane's confused gaze. You really scared me, you know? Wait, why were you there? I thought... You said you hate hockey and you won't change your opinion. So why? Because I wanted to apologize for what I said. But I came too late, so I thought I would talk with you after the game, but then it happened, and I was so scared you were going to die or that you would end up paralyzed like me and hate me for causing it, and then we went here and the doctor said... Wait, slow down. What are you talking about? Why would I hate you? What do you mean paralyzed like you? KyouHaba froze. This is it. Because if we didn't argue, if I went with you, it wouldn't happen because you would be focused on the game and not anything else. I'm sorry, He flinched when a slightly calloused hand covered his own, the familiar touch sending a weak shockwave through his arm. He sniffed and closed his eyes, unable to look up. Shigeru, look at me. Shaking his head, KyouHaba tried to pull away, but Kyotani held him surprisingly firmly for someone who just woke up after being unconscious. Please, look at me. KyouHaba hesitantly looked up, his heart hammering against his ribs. Kyotani's eyes were firm, but not hateful. At least he didn't think so. I'm sorry. Kyotani's face softened. Don't apologize for something that's not your fault. But... Don't. It was just a bad decision. I should have let the puck go. Not your fault. I could never hate you. I love you too much for that. KyouHaba let out a shaky breath, some of the tension leaving his body. Some, but not all. Still, I'm sorry for being so stubborn about hockey. I know it's important for you and I should have been more understanding about it. But it's difficult. The warm hand moved to caress his cheek. Why do you hate hockey so much? Is it because of your ex? KyouHaba sighed. He really didn't want to talk about his past. Not now. But he knew Watari was right, and they had to talk about it if their relationship was supposed to continue. And he desperately wanted it to continue. It's partially because of him, but it's mainly because I just can't stand watching people pushing each other on the boards. Shigeru. No, please, let me speak. It's not really about violence, that was more about him. I just... When I see someone hitting the boards, I mentally get back and it makes me sick and scared and... It's like reliving it all over again. He felt Kyotani going still for a moment before he resumed the small movements of his thumb on his cheek. What happened to you? I was practicing for one competition. I really wanted to win that one because it would mean a straight pass into a championship. I wanted to try a quadruple jump, but I landed wrong and crashed my back into the boards. He took a shaky breath. I knew something was wrong when I couldn't get up, but I thought it's just shock or something. But then they told me I had 2 fractured vertebrae and that it damaged the spinal cord. They said I might have put too much pressure on my spine when practicing and that it was already damaged when I hit it, and that's why it got broken. He instinctively took Kyotani's hand in his, clinging to it as if it was an anchor. I spent the next year in the wheelchair, going around doctors to try to get myself back on my feet. I guess that was the time I realized he didn't really care about me and I ended it. But I felt so alone in it and no surgery was helping for a long time. And when I finally could walk again and stand on the ice, it felt all wrong. I was scared it will happen again, that I will end up paralyzed for the rest of my life and I couldn't go on. That's why you ended your career? KyouHaba nodded. I just couldn't stand on the skates without thinking it will happen again. I still can't look at boards, anywhere, without thinking about it. That's why I can't watch hockey anymore. It reminds me of all the things that happened with him, but also because whenever I see someone hit the boards, it takes me back and I get scared. That's also why I was so wobbly when we went skating. Kyotane's eyes widened, guilt flashing over his face. Oh god, I'm so sorry. If I knew, I would never take you there. Don't be sorry, I really enjoyed it, I swear. I was telling the truth when I said I feel safe knowing you won't let me get hurt. Kyotane sighed and tugged him closer, making KyouHaba sit on the side of the bed. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I don't want to remember it. I want to enjoy being with you without thinking about my past, because I feel safe and happy when I'm with you, and I don't want to ruin it. But it's hard when your life revolves around something that reminds me of everything bad that happened. He bit his lip and looked away. I know it's my problem, not yours. And I'm trying to work on it, really, because I love you and I want to be with you. But I'll understand if you don't want to wait for me to deal with that. Silence settled in the room, and KyouHaba's heart sank. This is it. Who would have time for this? He's ending it while he still can. Shige. He flinched and squeezed his eyes shut. Just be quick about it, please. He yelped, his heart threatening to jump out of his chest when he got pulled down to Kyotane's chest, the strong arms wrapping around his waist. Ken? You should have told me sooner. KyouHaba blinked in confusion. Sorry? Kyotane's warm breath tickled on his neck as he hugged him tighter, the ever-so-gentle hands rubbing his back. He sagged into the hug and buried his face into Kyotane's shoulder, hiding the tears spilling from his eyes. I thought you would tell me to leave. You are worth every wait, Shige, no matter how long it is. You might have trouble believing it because of what that asshole did to you, but trust me in this, okay? And KyouHaba did trust him, in everything. He smiled, surprised by the thought. It was a strangely freeing feeling, now spreading through his chest, making him excited for the future of their relationship together. He paused and pulled away a bit, just to see into Kyotane's eyes. What are we? Kyotane tilted his head and hissed when the fixing collar stopped him, returning his head into a normal position. Anything you want us to be? I want us to be together, like in the last week. We don't have to live together, but just being with you makes me happy. So, I really want us to be together. Kyotane chuckled, the low rumbling sound making KyouHaba all warm and fuzzy inside. I take it you want that too? How could I ever say no to that? He got tucked closer again and laid his head on Kyotane's shoulder, carefully minding his hurt neck. He could probably stay like this forever if it wasn't for the hospital. But as soon as they would get home, he wouldn't mind it in the slightest. I really want to kiss you right now, you know? Then do. Gentle fingers were immediately in his hair, pulling him slightly down to connect their lips. KyouHaba sighed contently into the kiss, his mind going blank for a moment. He really could get used to this. Aw, look at them, Hajime. So sweet. KyouHaba startled and jumped back, his breath hitching. Iwaizumi smacked Oikawa's head.
You have to ruin everything, don't you?
I'm sorry, we didn't want to disturb you. We brought you some food and we will take our leave.
But Hajime...
No, you can catch up with your friend later. You are too obnoxious.
Meanie.
Iwaizumi rolled his eyes and KyouHaba snickered. He got up to take the offered food, nodding in thanks before putting it on the bedside table. Iwaizumi squeezed Kyotani's shoulder. Make sure you are fit for the spring season, or I'll never forgive you. It perhaps sounded as a threat, but the soft smile tugging in the corner of his mouth betrayed him. Kyotani huffed a short laugh. No worries, Captain. You won't get rid of me this easily. I certainly hope so. He looked at KyouHaba. Please take care of him. He's stupid enough to try and stand on the ice next week. Kyotani huffed, offended, and KyouHaba chuckled. I promise. If anything made the last 4 months worth it, it was this moment. Although that wasn't entirely true. Those 4 months were probably the best time he ever had. He would never think taking care of a grumpy hockey player would bring him so much joy. Though truth to be told, Kentaro took care of him the same amount, just in a slightly different way. And now, he was here, sitting in the front row of the hockey stadium right by the plexiglass, waiting for his fiancée to come on the ice for the first time since his injury, his heart beating in excitement. Fiancée. It felt amazing to be able to say that. He knew he was still being unnecessarily reluctant about some things, torn between being scared of messing up and worrying he was taking too long and Kentaro would get bored and leave. But Kentaro never complained and always made sure he didn't feel rushed into anything, for which he was eternally grateful. He perked up when the announcer finally called the home team on the ice, the whole stadium rising up in cheers. He waved at Kentaro, who gave him a toothy grin before going for the warm-up shooting. He still had to wear neck protection, but it didn't seem like he minded. KyouHaba's heart swelled watching him seamlessly shoot one puck into the net after another, the fire and joy from just being on the ice burning in his eyes. The last months were full of events, both pleasant and difficult, but they made it all the way here. All the hardships felt like they were worth it, and he couldn't wait for what the future had prepared for them. Though, as he slowly spun the silver ring on his finger, he might have had an idea about that. The spring was coming. KyouHaba could tell as much just by looking out of the window, or by watching Kyotani pace around like a nervous wolf, grumbling under his breath about not being allowed to go outside for a run. He was aware animals tend to be restless after winter, but he had no idea the same applied to two-legged dogs. Can you stop making circles in the carpet? With a huff, Kyotani turned away from him but settled on the couch, his leg bouncing almost immediately. KyouHaba sighed. Seriously? Come on, it's not like they forbid you from moving completely. And besides, you're blowing off steam doing rehabs, so what got you so restless? That's not enough. I need to move. My body isn't used to staying still. Rolling his eyes, KyouHaba continued to fold the pile of laundry he just finished, half of his mind already thinking about what to make for lunch. He knew what he signed himself up for when he agreed to move in with Kyotani for good, not only to take better care of him, but also because he found it difficult to go back to his solitary living. Kyotani seemed to agree with him on that, even though his fiery personality made things a bit difficult sometimes. though the sweet moments outweighed the occasional clashes by a great margin, and he definitely couldn't complain about lack of love or affection. He couldn't recall the last time he felt so at peace around someone he was dating. Perhaps it was because they couldn't move further in the relationship physically for the time being, but KyouHaba liked to think it was also because of Kyotane's gentle heart and protective nature. We can go on a walk later if you want. Kyotane clicked his tongue as if the offer personally offended him.
Walking isn't enough, Shige. I need to run or get my hour in a gym.
But you can't. You know what the doctor said. You have to be careful with yourself now. He narrowed his eyes at Kyotane. You aren't a kid anymore, so please be a responsible adult in this.
Can you stop? You have no idea what it's like to not being able to move for months.
KyouHaba flinched, the flood of memories he would much rather forget tightening his throat. I do, remember? I couldn't move most of my body for over a year. Heavy silence settled in the flat, interrupted when Kyotane sighed heavily.
I know. Sorry.
He opened his arms, an invitation KyouHaba couldn't resist at any situation, and pulled KyouHaba to his chest, nuzzling into his hair while minding his previously injured neck.
Sorry for bringing it up again.
It's fine. But you're more restless than usual. Why?
Moving helps me think.
Something important to think about?
You could say that.
Curious, KyouHaba glanced up but couldn't read anything from Kyotane's face. He thought about pushing a bit more, but the months spent together taught him pressing Kyotane for answers never worked. And so he relaxed into the embrace, melting in the warmth Kyotane emitted. Especially now when the weather was still rather cold, dating a walking furnace had its advantages. He just didn't want to imagine their cohabitation in summer. Then a gentle kiss landed on his forehead, the soft hum bubbling in Kyotane's throat, snapping him out of the bliss. What was that for?
You'll see. Can you let go for a moment?
Confused, KyouHaba did as he was told, following Kyotane with his gaze before he disappeared into the bedroom. Before he could think about it too much, however, Kyotane was back, holding his hand behind his back as he settled on the couch again.
I have something for you, but I'm not sure if you would want it.
Furrowing his brow, KyouHaba reached for his free hand, his heart speeding up a bit with worry. If it's not a spider, then why wouldn't I want it?
Because it might be too soon for it.
Huh?
Just feel free to say no, okay? I won't hold it against you.
KyouHaba opened his mouth to ask for explanation, but then his mind short-circuited when a small box appeared on Kyotane's palm, a simple silver ring with a blue gem set in it resting inside. Is that... Kyotane blushed.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be an engagement one straight away. It can be a promise ring for now if you would prefer that. I don't really care how we call it. I would just like you to have it. As a proof that I love you and a promise that I won't ever leave you, no matter what happens in the future.
KyouHaba's vision hazed, his mind unable to come up with a coherent thought for a while. He only managed to nod before the firm squeeze of his hand grounded him again. Okay, that sounds awesome. The previously gathering tension left Kyotane's shoulders as he slid the ring on KyouHaba's finger, bringing it to his lips to leave a kiss on the band.
I'm glad you think so.
I really need a hug right now though, or I'm not going to survive this in one piece.
A throaty chuckle vibrated through Kyotane's chest as he pulled KyouHaba back into his arms, keeping him from crumbling into pieces. If this all was a dream, he really didn't want to wake up.
I love you too. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this monster of a supercut. I actually didn't expect to reach almost 3 hours, but hey, it is what it is. Also, this is kind of an experiment on my part. I want to see how the whole supercut thing is working and how it's going to be working for you, of course, most importantly. So let me know. As I said before a few times, I would like to make supercuts a thing for story arcs from the monoship storylines and from the polyship storylines as well. So we will see. Let me know how you like this. If you have any requests or ideas, the request form is linked in the video description. See you next time!